big shiny Sunday to you, or whatever day it is for wherever you're tuning in from. I apologize. I'm still in a bit of a tizzy from this conversation I've just had not too long ago here. I don't know how much details I'm really allowed to give, but I was speaking with a reporter doing an article on this from a mainstream media source that was very curious about some of the angles in which we view things here. We got to talk about the emotional violence aspects, about the importance of the detection of the early warning signs, all of the things, all the factors that we touch on here that we feel is the most important. Talking about the psychological warfare aspects of it, what things might need to go into changing in order to protect family vlogging channels on the platform, and most importantly the children. So I'm still kind of coming down from that that little conversation there, and I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be used. It might be just for like an article, and I don't know if it's gonna be a major thing or not. I don't know, but it was a little interesting, and definitely kind of still, it was a nervous thing, but in a good way. So yeah, that was that. Well, I'll keep you guys posted for whatever comes down the line on that, whatever comes out of that. But I do have a good presentation for you guys tonight. For any of you guys that are not fully caught up with everything that's been going on this week, what happened with the hearing, we're going to do kind of like a run through for that. And then otherwise we are going to fill in a bit of the details that have come up since, and just get everybody on the same page of what's been going on and where it's going, and what the next steps are here. But welcome everybody. What's up, Jamie? What's up, Kelly? Welcome, Jenny. Welcome all the lurkers and anybody else that's just joining us. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Yeah, there was definitely noting on how passionate, I guess, that I am about covering this, and they wanted to know why and what the significance is, I guess, and why why I thought that it was such a big thing on the internet, why it's getting picked up so much versus other child family vlog things, and went through the whole spectrum of all the main concerns that we do have here, and the main factors, I guess, the points that we touch on, and what why this is such an important thing, and to keep talking about, and why we got to keep our eyes on it and keep pushing in the pursuit of justice for these poor kids, and for kids all around, kids before them, kids after them, anybody in that sphere, because it is such a new thing, and because there really isn't anything put in place to be able to protect these kids just yet, because they're all the pioneers right now of this new child labor situation in such a way, so I know YouTube's made great waves trying to do what it can to starting with making the made for kids, and changing things around, and having just the kids only app, and obviously they're doing everything that they can within their power, but there is a lot more to it that we do need to consider as a society, and again, needing to be able to start recognizing, identifying, and detecting the early warning signs so it doesn't get to this point, especially like when you're incentivizing whatever it is you're doing with these kids for the content. Either way, it's it could be bad for the kids, no matter how you cut it, because if there's no regulations on the child labor laws aspect of it, and it's there's just so many different ways that it can go wrong, that we need to start taking accountability for as a society, and speaking up for, and doing something about. So without further ado, let's jump into this for the second time. No more ados. I bid you adieu. Let's dive into it here. And yeah, so first off, I think I did add the warning in here, so I won't even have to say it, but
Hey, Brian Cheney with KUTV2 News, continuing to provide you updates on the Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt case as it pertains to child abuse charges. They had an initial hearing in court today. It was virtual. So many people clogged the virtual WebEx that they actually started almost 40 minutes late. There was...
Yeah, which you guys remember that, and I was kind of relaying it back and forth, and tried to report on it in real time, but then had like these people were yelling, and it was just nonsense. And you know how I felt about that. We went over that. Most of you guys know anyways, but it was absolute pandemonium. And until somebody mentioned that the way you behave in the virtual court can be considered contempt of court, because it's still a courtroom, a court of law, right? So luckily that brought it in, and then things were able to go underway. But yeah, it was just craziness.
Much interest in this case. So what happened today? Not much. Between the two of them, they said 3 words. They answered the judge. They said yes. Here's a picture on my social media account of both of them. Ruby Franke was briefly on camera. Jodi Hildebrandt was on just a few minutes longer, a few seconds longer. Both will have another hearing coming up on the 21st. They initially were ordered to be held without bail. The judge upheld that and will keep them held.
Which as far as I know, they were putting in a motion to try to extradite the next hearing, because I guess they are really they want to get out of there as soon as possible. And one of the lawyers has a primary engagement, I guess, a conflict of scheduling. So they may be trying to rejigger that around, and of course we'll keep you guys posted. But for now, we're gonna go with the September 21st at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. So I've already set up that upcoming live for the coverage, the live coverage of that we're going to do the live reporting on that. So if you guys want to get notified on that on the channel page, you'll see that's already available, and you can click in for that specifically. So tentatively it's September 21st, but that may change. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that.
Bail until their next hearing. But as of right now, not much moving forward, with their attorney calling most of the shots today.
A YouTube influencer and a mental health counselor made their initial court appearances in the St. George on felony child abuse charges. As new special.
So now you guys, I'm sure you guys have already been taking in some of the coverage now since Friday, and so you maybe have already seen them. But for those of you that haven't, you can definitely see that it's having an effect on these women. That getting a taste of their own medicine isn't tasting so great. Having the isolation and the some of these different factors that she was doing to these kids is happening to them now, and they're not taking it very well. And from what I understand right now, Ruby Franke is still in a medical block within the prison. Actually, I could probably double check that. We'll double check that in a minute, but it's fine. But the last news that we heard is that she was in the medical block. There were some different, speculatory suggestions as to why she might be in there, but I guess most of the sources are saying that it's due to a mental health, that she's really starting to have like a nervous breakdown, and it's been about a week, or maybe I guess just over a week now, and then they're going to remain in there until this next court date. They were supposed to be finding out on this day whether or not they were going to be getting bail, and I'm guessing too that the pair of them, or at least Ruby, was pretty confident that that she would be able to be released, being that she got such a low level evaluation as far as the chances of fleeing and or reoffending in between and so on and so forth. She was like a low level prisoner, but due to the complexity of the case and the severity of the case, I think that they kind of had to step back and reconsider the previous evaluation. So they are still in there. There was no bail. Nothing happened really. It was just a motion to extend and delay to the 21st. But let us continue here.
Andrew Adams suffered himself. The interest in this case is so high, it nearly derailed the hearing. Andrew?
Well, at one point, one of the lawyers outside the court told everyone that even the judge was having a hard time signing on to the online hearing with as many as 1,200 observers. Some people even showed up in person to see the latest in a case that had both captivated and concerned them.
Yeah, I don't blame them though too. Like, some people really want to see it for their own eyes, because I think this whole thing's been such a long time coming. Yeah, good point, Jamie. Wonder how they're having the cameras and unwanted attention on them with the kids. Well, this is it. Of course, I don't want to wish any bad or suffering on anybody. Two wrongs don't make a right, obviously. But when it comes to little kids and with this specific situation, I don't really have any sympathy whatsoever. And they're, I wish upon them that they're getting exactly what they deserve. I hope they're having the day they deserve. I hope they have the rest of the week, year, life that they deserve. Whatever they've earned, whatever's their ticket on the karma train, can't stop the karma train, and it's coming. Chugga, 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 choo, choo, choo here. So.
it was like my whole childhood. So I thought it was crazy.
On a quiet day outside 5th District Court, it was anything but inside.
I grew up watching the 8 Passengers channel, and so when I saw all this happening, I got super intrigued.
Complete strangers showed to see the initial appearances of 8 Passengers influencer Ruby Franke. And
I guess just the novelty of it too for some of these people that have been watching them since they were young, and then it's like, what the heck, right? But then you gotta wonder too, like, how much has that impacted all of these viewers, like whether they were kids or parents taking their advice or whatever the reason, whatever they were getting out of the content. You know, you gotta wonder how that's affected them long term, because if they're watching that and thinking, oh yeah, like this wonderful, you know, religious family that's, you know, they all look well cared for and it all looks nice on the outside, you know, there is, I think, a novelty factor probably to that for some of these folks that we're watching that maybe hadn't picked up on the abuse and the different, you know, nuances, the subtle nuances that would have indicated the abuse happening behind the scenes. The emotional violence, I mean, because I guess, you know, there's no way to know or prove if there was any actual physical anything that happened to them before this incident, but obviously we speak a lot here about the emotional and psychological aspects of trauma and the complexities of certain kinds of trauma and prolonged trauma. So there's just so much more to this, so we're just going to keep moving forward here, not get too off track.
Health counselor Jodi Hildebrandt, both charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse.
And also I'm interested in looking into criminal psychology, so I wanted to come to a case I was interested in.
It seemed a lot of people had the same idea. So many logged on to the online hearing, it clogged up the system.
Because of the interest in these hearings today from the public and members of the media, we've had some technical difficulties.
Nearly 40 minutes after the scheduled start time.
Ms. Franke, can you hear me?
Yeah, that was pretty ridiculous. But I mean, you guys know, I was saying, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a little delayed. I think they're probably going to have a pretty big flood. Like, sending you guys the link to go to do the to get into the virtual court for yourselves. I know a lot of you guys were having trouble with that. And even to get to that link again, it was like timed out and service interruption and whatever. So I knew they were going to get slammed. So that luckily I had us in there and in the waiting room good and early, and then I just sat and waited and didn't touch anything. Like, whenever they were shutting stuff off and back on and changing it around, it wasn't the room being closed, it was just that they were trying to shut down the cameras and everybody yelling, and it was chaos. It was just chaos. And honestly, it was like, if that's an example of the state of society right now and how serious we're going to be taking something like this, like, all the more reason to be, you know, keep continuing the conversation and keeping the level of seriousness and staying objective and you know, factual and to the point, because this is just, there's so many layers that we all need to understand a little better just for the sake of progress in the mental health system, you know, because these are all kinds of things that in the long term can be so complicated to be able to sort it out, because the complexity of just emotional violence on its own, a lot of people grow up thinking like, okay, well, that was just normal, that's just my mom, or that's just my dad, or whatever, like other people's parents are like that, like it's no big deal. But when you start seeing it through that other lens and watching it being done to these kids, you know, I think, and I can speak even for myself and some other folks that have been commenting or reaching out, that, you know, you start to realize and see how much worse some of the things were when seeing it happen to these other kids, and like starting to really dig down to like, wow, like how many layers to the damage, you know? It's like an onion when it comes down to it, when it is so complex. So I think it's an important learning tool for us all on those various levels of not only the psychological, but you know, with the religious factors, and then as well being on the world stage with the child actor type factor. You know, the appearance of affluence and wealth having an effect on the ignorance of the agencies that were put in place that should have been there to protect them and to make that contact, to ensure they've made contact with each of those kids. But anyway, yeah, so this is why we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to, you know, I want to make sure that we press and pressure for the justice as well. And I think, too, we want to keep pushing for the father to be investigated and brought into play here. Because regardless if he was there or a part of whatever the incident was that they're currently facing the charges on, there is so much more to this. And there's years of evidence that they're probably going to be sifting through. I'm sure that they've I mean, who knows for sure, but I would hope that they've seized the hard drives and whatever other content, that the stuff that didn't make the cut, because obviously there's certain stuff she had chosen to keep in these vlogs, and even that was bad enough. So it just makes you wonder what else didn't make the cut, you know, and with her comments on saying, you know, that the camera keeps me under control, or, you know, I'm gonna pretend everything's just like how I want it, and blah blah blah, and we're not gonna repeat this thing, and it was to be not recorded, but we're gonna have this conversation about it, like certain things and indicators that she was saying it's worse off camera. And Kevin was there the whole time. Kevin was there when they had the kid sleeping on a beanbag chair for several months. You know, there's certain aspects that and factors that some people are really concerned about that that need answers. You know, so, and it needs justice. Like, this whole thing needs a lot more investigation than what it appears on the surface, I guess, is what I'm getting at here.
Yes.
Franke and Hildebrandt made their separate appearances to face their charges for the first time. Both women are being held without bail, and a hearing was scheduled to address that matter.
She's aware of the charges, she's aware of the elements, she's aware of the potential penalties.
When I was a kid, I just thought they were like the coolest family, and I'd watch them like all day, every day, whenever.
Yeah, that's nuts. Coolest family or what? But yeah, exactly. In that video where, pardon me, the son is talking about his several months without a bedroom, and pardon me, sorry, I'm choking on it. She's sort of trying to throw the conversation off the track by saying, I don't think the viewers know this, like, we weren't going to talk about this publicly, like this was a private punishment kind of thing. And he very clearly was still struggling to even fully understand what the punishment was even originally for, because of just how insane the whole thing was. You know, how the mental acrobatics it would take to wrap your head around this, as that being that kid in that position. You know, it's like he's lost all the meaning. He's just falling into line and like, whatever you say, Ma. And then there's that other clip where he's just like, yep, it's my fault, you did this, and I have to be responsible. And he kind of comes out and he seems a little weird, but at that point he's just trying to rush through that segment and be like, whatever, Ma, I'll tell you what you want to hear, and then leave me be. I just want to get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. Like, I'm so close to being 18. Please, for the love of all things good in this world, just leave me alone, you know? So I think there's some of those indicators too that we got to be identifying along the way, that it's such a deep impact to such a formative time of their lives. Like, it's that stuff, a deep kind of different kind of trauma during certain times of your life are going to leave a deeper imprint, you know, like when you're first coming from like a kid to a preteen, and then when you're coming from preteen and shifting into going to be an adult. Those are really crazy transitional times all on their own. Like, puberty is difficult all by itself without all this other chaos going on. So there's so many other little factors here that I can't stress it enough, you know?
Free time.
Given the influencer's popularity in particular, observers say the ordeal has left them stunned as the world watches.
With how like popular they were and how much it's been blowing up over social media, I can understand why. But it's just crazy that it's gotten this big.
Well, and it is the whole world, you know, like in the hearing live stream we had the other day, we had people coming in from all over the world, Germany, Iceland, you know, all over the United States, the UK, we had Ireland, all these different folks all tuning in from everywhere, like, what in the heck is going on over here? You know, so obviously, not only is it that it's like it's not just a viral thing, it's that it's impactful, it's touched the hearts across the nation. Like, everyone's hearts are crying across the nation for these poor kids. People are like, you know, what can we do? How do we fix this? This is like it's like red alert, you know, we're here, what do we do? Like, geez. And then knowing how many other kids are probably going through this, kids that are in less of a fortunate position to begin with too, whose parents are trying to get to a point of having the family vlog thing too. Like, we got to think of all the other layers here. And you know, this whole new precedence that's set with this opportunity given with the platform, right? So we as a society, us as the viewers, us as the creators, we all have a responsibility to really, like, shout it from the rooftops and protect the little ones.
Well, that hearing about the bail issue was set for September 21st, but it sounds like at least one of the lawyers has a potential conflict, so we'll have to see how that shakes out over the next couple of weeks. Again, both women being held without bail here in Washington County. Andrew Adams, KSL 5 News.
You're here just to observe. Please do not turn on your microphones or cameras. It causes problems, technical problems. If we have too many people with their cameras on, it just eats up the bandwidth.
Okay, the hearing itself lasted only a few minutes. A request was made to assign Franke to the same judge assigned to Jodi Hildebrandt, which the court and prosecutors approved with no objections.
Oh, okay, so maybe that was it. It was kind of hard to hear too. It was so quiet, and then I was trying to relay it to you guys too, and everything was just chaos the whole time. But that, I guess, was the they just shifted to having the same lawyer because of the schedule conflict. Which, okay, so that's good. But the one thing I do want to mention, though, that the state prosecutor, or not prosecutor, the attorney for the state is the same attorney that, if you guys, I don't know if you know, but Warren Jeffs, who was one of these leaders for one of these FLDS groups, that he went down for his crimes against children. And I mean, I won't go into the whole thing because that's devastating all on its own, but hopefully that's good things for this case. Once I found that out, I felt a lot more confident about this judges changing around, because I was a little concerned as to whether or not the judges changing over, if it was going to be that they were going to have a problem with finding one that wouldn't be a conflict of interest or didn't have other connections, like, because everybody's so connected in the church and just in the community there, that it may be hard to have a fair trial on both sides, you know what I mean, for these defendants. So knowing that it's somebody that put away one of the most prolific culty-like crimes against children leaders, then we might have some hope here that they're not going to let them off easy. And maybe this is why they're having a bit of a breakdown, because now they're changing the judges around, and maybe that's not so much in their favor anymore, or maybe it never was. I don't know. It's only speculation. We're just discussing the possibilities here at this point. But anyways, moving forward. You know, actually, I'm going to say, too, I think that everybody's still absorbing the shock from the situation. I think it probably sent shock waves through their entire community and for everyone. And I think that's a part of it, too. This is why we're all so, like, what the heck? Like, and so glued to it. Like, no matter what it is, whether, you know, some people are tuning in just for the shock and gossip of it. Like, oh, I watched them for so long when I was a kid. Like, what's going on? Or if it's that you're really curious and you know, you're out there fighting the good fight. Whatever the case may be, it's everybody's feeling the same. Like, what in the heck is going on here? You know, how did this happen? How is this able to happen for such a long time, too, right? So, a lot of factors here. It's a lot of devastation, a lot of heartbreak. It's a lot of hurt, I think, for a lot of our inner children, too, that, you know, any of us that may have related to some of the situations or had, you know, that it's a little bit of a deeper feeling that you have connected with this case. I think, you know, it's just, we're all here for it, though.
The next hearing for both Franke and Hildebrandt will be on September 21st.
Franke is the creator of a popular YouTube channel, 8 Passengers, and today she made her first appearance in court, where she faces 6 felony counts of aggravated child abuse. So
hey, welcome, lurkers. Also, by the way, welcome to all the new folks joining us. Hey, Siobhan's here. Kelly's still here. What's up, guys? Extra special welcome to the regulars, of course, but welcome to the new folks as well. And to anyone rejoining us from the live hearing the other day, appreciate yous.
Joining us now to talk about this case is criminal defense attorney Clayton Sims. Clayton, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We were talking earlier about this case and just the amount of attention it's gotten. We were looking at, this was an appearance via Zoom, and there were so many people on it. Over 1,000 people were attending that some people couldn't even get on that.
Yeah, I think that was the thing, too, that it's like they created such a panic, because I don't know if even some of the big news stations were even able to get in. Like, the judge himself was having trouble getting in, and it was just a whole crazy thing. So I hope, like, now that was a learning experience for them. It was a learning experience for us, like me trying to keep up and do the whole thing, and definitely wasn't expecting the traffic that we got the other day. So that was really awesome to get, you know, that message out to as many people as possible, you know, our angle on it and how we view it. But then, you know, it's like, it's almost like getting in the way, though, some of these folks, because it is bringing such a draw of attention that it's almost like it could be obstructing the case in such a way. So I hope for next time they have it figured out how to make sure nobody can turn all their cameras on and all their microphones and everything on, and it be just the host speaking to the, you know, to the open, to out in the open, but no interference. So hopefully they got that better sorted out for next time and that are able to make sure the people that need to get in there are in there to be able to give the most effective reporting on this. You know, it needs as much coverage as possible. We need as many eyeballs on this as possible. So one could even wonder if it was, you know, maybe not so much coordinated, but for some people on purpose that are still a fan of the passengers or are not sure enough of the case and are thinking that, you know, because I still am seeing some comments like, oh, what she did wasn't so bad. But they're not even aware yet of that they, you know, what the details of the arrest were. So to continue this conversation, to keep pushing it forward, to keep the details clear and concise and out in the open, that's, you know, the pressure from the public is really what's going to drive this home. No matter what they try to do to, you know, anyone's trying to do to obstruct it.
It's incredible to see the amount of attention it's gotten.
Right. The capacity of the courthouse was overwhelmed. They weren't expecting that many people, and they couldn't process that many visitors, and some people weren't on mute, so it was very difficult to conduct business in the courthouse.
If this does go to trial, what could we see in regards to a defense in this case?
Right. Well, so there's the main defense would be reasonable discipline. So you have to ask yourself, what type of discipline can a parent impose upon their children? So it's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You want to be just right. Not enough punishment, kids run wild and free, so you want to give them some amount of guidance, but you don't want to be too harsh.
Which absolutely, you know, I think that having a good, firm understanding and a balance of reward, discipline, you know, all the different factors that go into parenting, you do want to have a balance, you know, like everything in moderation. But this is the thing, that's what I think has made this into such the next level thing, is because it's not even just the punishments itself, it's that she seemed to get so much of a pleasure out of it, like such a thrill, like turned into the camera after everything, like knowing she really hit them where it hurt and that like really had them tormented or in fear, and like looking at the camera with that smile, like, did it again. There you go, viewers. Giving you what you need, what you love, or whatever, you know, like as if the viewer or whoever's on the other side of the camera is like an accomplice, like a partner in crime. Like, yeah, see, we did it again. This is, we're doing it, you know? Like, there's definitely an additional layer there of pushing the envelope for content versus maybe just pushing the envelope because of her own sickness, you know? And then there being people latching onto that and having maybe either just because of the novelty again of it, or they're sharing that sickness. Who knows? Who knows? But the whole thing's messed up.
So a jury would have to determine how much punishment can a parent give them. This case, they're alleging serious bodily injury, malnourishment, abuse, injury.
And as you know, yes, it's alleged, but we have not only the witnesses of the neighbors, but then the police that arrived on site that could see that these kids were malnourished, that could see that they had not only the duct tape residue, but ligature marks from ropes. And who knows how long they'd been in there for. They were hungry. He was thirsty and hungry, and that's the main thing. And he didn't want to tell them why he had been put in this situation. And as far as like he was concerned, it was his own fault. He did it. He did something wrong. It was his own fault. And from what we've gathered with these interviews with these other victims, these alleged potential victims coming forward that were former clients of Jodi, including her own niece, who she had served as a therapist, which is such an ethical code violation that it's not even funny on its own, let alone how inhumane it all was, that everything that went down. And it all is echoing the same plot line in such a way. So we're going to get into that a little later down the line, and we're going to be diving even deeper into that later in the week, maybe next week. I don't know. It's been one of the toughest interviews to get through personally. I'm not going to lie. It's heart-wrenching, but it's echoing a story of many, especially within these organizations and within the Mormon group specifically. So we definitely want to bore into that hole a little deeper. You know, there's a dent in the side, and we're going to just keep pecking away till we can bust it wide open and all that darkness and ucky, oozy, evil shit can come out. And we're going to shine the light in there, and we're going to make it, I don't know, at least we're going to illuminate it and start to see what the main core root of the issues are here, where the infection starts, and then how it spreads through families, spreads through their peers, and it's just, you know, and like how Ruby Franke's cousin had said, like, this is a generational issue in their whole family and people, everyone they know, basically, you know. So there's so much more to this. It's such a bigger deal than what it is than just even the Ruby Franke thing. There's so much more going on here, and this is a very important learning lesson for all of us today in society.
So it looks like it's probably much more than just reasonable discipline, but that will be the defense.
This concept of reasonable discipline is just mind-boggling to me, because it's really up to the jury to decide what is reasonable in that case, and I can imagine that creates some challenges.
Right, so people are reluctant to step into place and judge their neighbors and say, maybe I wouldn't do that, but is that criminal? And so a jury would have a hard time looking and listening to the evidence. You know, again, there's 8 counts. The children would have to testify, so it certainly would be a very difficult trial.
Clearly, the court was not anticipating this much attention, which is why we saw that Zoom proceeding basically get shut down by how many people were there. What do you think we can expect moving forward with how the court system will handle this case, given the amount of tension it's getting?
Well, the next thing up is a detention hearing. So both defendants are being held without bail. So there's a detention hearing to determine whether they can be released and what conditions they would be released under. Probably no contact with the children, not to be around people under the age of 18. So that's probably the next court date would be, I think, September 21st, to determine whether they can be released.
All right, Clayton Sims, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about this extremely disturbing case.
Thank you.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front.
Yeah, and like this is on record too. This is like this is solid. The phone call in from the neighbor describing the condition that the child is in. The police arrived. He was indeed in that condition. They went to Jodi's home. His little sister was in a similar condition. Like, no matter what you do, like these charges, they keep saying alleged, and I gotta say alleged, but I mean, I think there's more than enough here that we know what was going on in this instance. It's just gonna be a matter of what other charges can be laid against these women for past victims, past crimes, past potential alleged whatever, you know, whatever might come of this. There's gonna be so much more, and it's already, you know. My stomach's been churning pretty much since the day I started covering this. And the more I started diving into it, it's a sick, dark place over there, man. I don't know how this is happening or like and been able to happen for so long, and nobody really knows. But here we are. At least we're here now. It's better late than never.
Door asking for help, and he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house. He's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. He's hungry and he's thirsty.
Tonight, the haunting 911 call from the neighbor who found the son of Ruby Franke after he allegedly escaped from being tied up in a basement.
Fox 13 News reporter Lucy Nelson breaks down that phone call and tells us what came out of the YouTube mom's first court appearance today.
Lucy joins us now live in studio. And Lucy, for those just catching up on this story, describe who we're talking about here and who was in court.
Kelly, Ruby Franke is a Utah mother of 6 behind a well-known parenting YouTube channel called Passengers.
Oh yeah, that's come up a few times. I noticed a few in the comments, and I've seen it around, people comparing it and bringing up the Daybell, Vallows, yeah, Lori Vallows or whatever, in the Daybell whatever trial. Yeah, there's like a lot of stuff that I feel like this is intersecting a lot of different lines here, and you know, with the Mormon Stories podcast guy John, he's noticed a lot of these intersecting lines that he's come across in the past too. But again, before there being any actual charges laid, it's really difficult for any of these other people to come forward with their story. They were really afraid of this woman. You know, from what they understood, there was a lot of power there, and they felt that their lives were destroyed because of this woman, you know. And allegedly, and who knows for sure, their cases hopefully will be reopened, and you know, that'll be sorted out in the court of law. But we are seeing a pattern. We are seeing a consistency across the board in these stories for what has happened in the past with Jodi's involvement and what has happened with Ruby and with her children, with the husband. It's a whole thing. It's actually so much deeper and darker than I could have even imagined. And you guys know right from the get-go that in my gut, I knew there was something deeper and darker going on, and it wasn't just the restraining and detaining, that there was something more going on here. And I hate when I'm right. You know it, like, because it's this stuff that, like, you know, I get that gut feel, and it ends up being correct, and I always hope to goodness that I'm not. But it's deep and it's dark, and we're gonna have to save the whole thing for another day. But I will be touching on it in this evening's stream to get you guys a foundation for that and preparation for that next stream, diving deeper with the stories from those alleged potential victims of Jodi's from the past.
She and her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, also ran a so-called counseling site called Connections. Now, last week, both were arrested and charged on several counts of aggravated child abuse after evidence surfaced suggesting they kept two of Franke's children tied up and starving in Hildebrandt's basement.
Tell me exactly what's happened.
And not just a basement. As far as what I've gathered, I believe it was a panic room. It was like a sub-level where most of these homes, I guess, out there don't have like a basement, but they have like sub-level, like cold cellar or whatever. And it was what was described as like a panic room, from my understanding. That maybe is maybe a bit of a separate. They keep saying basement, but then there is this panic room mentioned. So there has been a few different sources making different suggestions on the exact details on that. But so we will be keeping an eye on that as well, because obviously that's a questionable thing. If they were in there, you know, when and how did he escape, and you know what? There's a lot more layers, obviously.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help.
This is the 911 call from a man in Ivins, Utah. A 12-year-old boy showing up on his doorstep in an unimaginable condition, asking him to call police.
And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and we know there's been problems at this neighbor's house.
Which, like, in my opinion, that should be more than enough. That should be more than enough. They found them kids in a bad way. That should be more than enough. So, whatever. I know it's just the way the legal system works, but, you know.
That neighbor's house belongs to Jodi Hildebrandt, where she and well-known YouTube mom Ruby Franke broadcasted their controversial parenting advice and counseling site called Connections. It was in that same home where police say Franke's son escaped from the basement and ran to a neighbor's house for help.
Yeah, that's honestly the only other... I mean, obviously it's all been disturbing, but as far as the most disturbing parts of this that I've gone through to clip out and to be able to report back with for you guys and summarize and try to, you know, keep it objective and, you know, not so much as the emphasis on exactly what all the different traumas are, but what the results of that is as well, right? So, but that 911 call, you know, and even this old fellow tearing up, you could tell in his voice, like, how distressing he is just looking at this little boy trying to get through this phone call. And that, next to that, and that interview with Jessie, Jodi Hildebrandt's niece, that whole thing it really hits you in the guts. It's really, really raw and really just tragedy. It's all tragic. And you know, no matter how they cut it, like, justice needs to be served here. Whatever they gotta call it, whatever the title is, whatever. But she needs to be behind bars for a long time, in my opinion. You know.
He has duct taped around each ankle. Yeah, there's sores around them. I think there's a good chance he's been.
He also said.
Oh, and he has been around his ankles. I mean, his wrists as well. Okay, this boy has been. This kid has obviously been. I think he's been detained. He's obviously covered in wounds.
The dispatcher is heard saying they'll send an ambulance.
So, like, that is just, you know, it really just makes you wonder too, like, how long and what, you know, this, obviously the kid had to struggle a bit to get himself free, and, like, this poor friggin' neighbors, and oh man, the poor kid, like, the whole thing is just, holy crap. even still, I mean, for me reporting on it, like, you know, this isn't the first time, but it's almost like some of it, it strikes you like as if it's the first time every time, because it's just heart-wrenching. Shoot, I hit the wrong button there and we skipped a little too far. My bad, 1 second. Oh, now we're too far the other way. Might have to skip back a tiny bit and just start from here. Sorry, guys.
This kid has obviously been...
Actually, you know what? We don't need to hear that again. Let me just zoom this in over here and I can move it ahead just enough. We'll go to, like, here. Yeah, we'll just do it this way. That's better. Okay. Through the player, it's a little more finicky.
And in the background, the boy tells the neighbor that he doesn't need help and that nothing bad was happening to him at Hildebrandt's home.
He says what's happened to him is his fault.
The boy was immediately transferred to the hospital, and later police officers would find his little sister in the basement of Hildebrandt's home in a similar condition.
Afternoon, Mr. Winward. How are you?
Franke and Hildebrandt had their first court appearance Friday in Washington County.
My case is assigned to Judge Barnes. I would make an oral motion today to transfer this case to Judge Walton so that co-defendants track each other.
The judge granted a switch of Franke's judge to be the same as Hildebrandt's. The two will continue to be held without bond. Hildebrandt's attorney also filed a motion to the court asking for an expedited detention hearing, citing the defendant has experienced a life-threatening medical issue resulting in her hospitalization for several days.
Okay, so we're getting sort of mixed coverage on that, so okay. So they did push for an extradited trial too, so that the next court trial could be subject to change. So definitely make sure you hit that subscribe and the little bell to get the notification, and or if you haven't already, if you go to the channel page, that next court date, the 21st, is already set, but I will change that to whatever it might change to, so you guys will get the notification whether it's the 21st or if it ends up happening sooner. So all the more reason to pop over there and hit that notification there and everywhere, and we'll be able to stay on top of this as a team, as a group.
Days. As of now, the two are scheduled for court for September 21st. Live in studio, Lucy Nelson, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt had their initial appearance in Washington County after the two were arrested just last.
This is why I like to review the different news sources as well, because I find that, you know, it's like the telephone game. You get some different news coming down each way, and it's told a little bit differently each way, and when you look for the common denominator of each story, then that's where you're going to get the closest to the truth. So it's interesting to kind of see the different angles and how it's described in specific ways by different sources. So I do apologize that some of it is a little repetitive, but similar to some of the other situations we've followed and covered in the live streams and whichever, there's sometimes it's a big varied difference of the wording, and that can make a huge difference on the other side, right? So definitely important to kind of keep track as we go here of the news coverage as well, like the other news coverage versus just, you know, what I'm able to gather on this side, and everything coming together hopefully to make a bigger, more clearer picture that we can better learn from, right? And hey, Rebecca made it in. Everybody's rolling in. All the regulars are starting to get in here, and got lots of lurkers, and appreciate having you guys, but don't be afraid to join in the conversation. You're more than welcome.
Week. New at 10, 2 News obtained a 911 phone call from a dispatch center in Washington County. KUTV's Amanda Gilbert is live and breaks down what was on that call. Amanda?
We maybe don't need to go through the call again, actually. Like, that's maybe enough, but because the call is the same either way. When you watch the full call, it just ends up being bits of that call, so that doesn't change too much either way. Yes, it's just how it's presented would change, but you know what? I think we can probably skim along a little bit here. Don't want to hear the details again. We got it. We get it. Good, good, good. Yep. Thank you. I think that is, okay. Yeah, and then I guess there is the downstairs under the garage. There's a panic room. Okay, so he was, all right, so this is, I guess, the part that I wanted to include this for. It's been a flurry of keeping track of everything here. So I think that was the main extra point here that this added in, was that there was the panic room in the garage. So let's just keep note of that, and then we're going to move on to the next thing here. Where is this one going? I wonder if this is, okay,
Ruby Franke is known for her YouTube channel, 8 Passengers, and her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, were arrested in Ivins.
Nope, we can skip ahead here. Okay, so we got this next little bit is it's a law and crime segment, and that they're looking closer at the situation where she took the bed away, because I think, like I was saying earlier, this is like a big factor in what is going to include Kevin in the situation. Like, these are some of these really abusive punishments that Kevin would have been a whole party to. You know, he was there when in the video when they were talking about sending him to the wilderness camp, which whether that was before, I still haven't been able to confirm whether that was before or after the beanbag thing. But regardless, you're looking at almost a year of sleeping rough for who knows what reason. Like, and in this clip here, this video, if you watch the full clip of what they're showing on screen right now, this video, he's pretty much saying, like, I'm actually not really sure why I got the punishment to begin with. Here's why I think that I did, but I don't know. And he's kind of like laughing, like in disbelief, like how ridiculous it is that he doesn't even know why he's been punished in such a way. And he's almost like laughing to himself, like almost like on the verge of hysterics. And then she's starting to threaten more punishment in this clip on top of that, because, oh, you think it's funny? You didn't learn your lesson? And he's like, okay, let's just completely shut down now, because I can't even be in such disbelief that I'm laughing at the insanity of my life for a moment, trying to grasp and figure out what did I deserve? What did I do to deserve this? And then to have to do it on screen. So then, of course, he's talking about it, and she's like trying to bring him down from from even talking about it. Like, she's kind of trying to shut him down a bit, but he's like, no, like, I'm gonna talk about it. Like, he's obviously by this point he'd had enough, you know. But anyway, so I think it's important that we do look closer at this and at these specific allegations that did take place before these charges were laid, before this final incident, you know. And this is, again, why we want to be recognizing these early signs and being more proactive as a society and preventative rather than reactive, waiting for something awful to happen to kids before we do something about it, you know?
What you guys didn't know was Chad didn't get any room. He didn't get anything. He was sleeping on the floor in the family room.
Resurfaced videos from disgraced YouTuber Ruby.
Yeah, so I guess they clipped the part where she finally was like, yep, and she's willing to admit it and talk about it, but there's a whole, like, 4 or 5 minutes before that where she's like, oh, our viewers didn't know about that, we weren't going to talk about that kind of thing, and trying to, like, get him off it. But then, you know, it's like, okay, I guess we're talking about this. You know, it got to the point where she kept telling them, like, we need to have these serious conversations on camera, right? So he was finally like, okay, then let's have this serious conversation on camera. Let's talk about it.
Are now making the rounds, showing what critics call a pattern of abuse that stretches over multiple years.
Yeah, and this is the stuff that we've been talking about. That's the emotional violence. You know, it's attacks on these kids in a form of a psychological way that's going to affect them psychologically, not just a physical abusive situation. You know, and then of course there's the withholding of food, and of course there's the sleep deprivation and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't want to keep repeating myself too much for those of you guys that have been following real close, but for those of us just starting to pick up and join us, you know, we want to make sure we're all on the same page as we muscle through this.
You've been sleeping on a beanbag. I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October.
Videos Franke herself posted describe her controversial parenting style, like forcing her teenage son to sleep on a beanbag for months.
Oh, absolutely, they're going to have a complex trauma, symptoms of a trauma or a CPTSD situation. Both of the main interviewees that have come forward, Jessie, Jodi's niece, and as well as the cousin that Law and Crime interviewed, Ruby Franke's cousin, they both said that they suffered from a complex post-traumatic stress disorder, that they both suffered greatly due to the details of their rough upbringings that also, of course, share a lot of similarities. So, yeah, like, we're looking at where these kids are going to end up if we don't, you know, really also take that, you know, and you've heard me mention this too, the same extreme of care into their recovery and their healing as was put into the harm to these kids, and on a psychological level, because it's more than just, you know, and it might take them time to even unpack all of it and figure out what all was a damaging thing to them and what was more of a normal thing. You know, it can be so hard to sort that out the more complex that it is. Hence, complex post-traumatic stress, you know? It's like a battlefield. If your childhood is like a battlefield where you're having to like evade torpedoes being sent at you from your own mother, whew, that just rocks your whole system. That sets you up for all kinds of dysregulation and maladaptation and different stress, anxiety, whatever disorders down the line, you know?
Or refusing to drop her then 6-year-old daughter's lunch off at school. These videos posted years before she was arrested and charged with aggravated child abuse.
And hopefully nobody gives her food.
And it's second-degree felony aggravated child abuse, I might add, which is a second degree means it was knowingly and or intentionally. So it wasn't even just accidental, like whatever, you know. I mean, is there such thing? Who knows? But it's just at a second degree severity.
And nobody steps in and gives her a lunch.
Both Franke and her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, were arrested on August 30th after Franke's 12-year-old son broke free out of duct tape from Hildebrandt's home and rushed to a neighbor for help.
911, the address of your emergency. Tell me exactly what's happened.
I just had a...
Hold on, we'll skip this part again. I think, like I said, that we've kind of gone over. We know the details of the 911. That won't change, so let's skim that a little bit. But the news around it, we want to be dissecting it as we go.
It happened in the small community of Ivins, Utah, about 4 hours south of Salt Lake City. Franke and Hildebrandt's self-help parenting and brands spread farther than just the state of Utah, though, as the pair created parenting advice videos for viewers across the country.
Our whole life's goal is to make our kids...
That's the other thing, is they were giving parenting advice. Like, there were people looking up to this family and taking their suggestions and practicing these different punishment styles, exerting this same kind of emotional, insane violence on these kids, this psychological warfare on these poor kids. All across the nation, they had over 2 million people subscribe to them, you know, and how many people were the parents, like not just the child viewers like we saw at the courthouse there, but were the parents of families similar to this and living in communities similar to this that are using them as like the prototype and like the goals, the standards, the gold standard of how they're trying to live and be, you know, and adopting these. And then not to mention on the connections side with the Jodi Hildebrandt, where she literally is working directly with children and families on, you know, the familial relationships and personal development and childhood development, and knowing her history linked up with Ruby's history, like that's just like two volcanoes spitting lava into each other, and on the other end there's children, and they're the collateral damage. And it's some of these clips, those kids were like dead inside. Like you could see it in their eyes. They're just, their whole spirit, their self-identity, their whole sense of self was just being extinguished more and more and crushed and stamped on day after day after day. And it again echoes much of the same experiences of these other victims that have come forward alleging their own abuse, both at the hands of Jodi and just the different family dynamics. There's so much to that just on its own, that's so much damage without adding the physical aspects.
Happy, and most of the time we're trying to make our kids happy. What we're actually doing is being in distortion and inviting them into a controlling dynamic.
Franke was also behind the...
Which, oh my goodness, the hypocrisy of the clips of the videos of them when they came together and started talking about the child parenting stuff and doing the Connections YouTube videos together, which this is part of the smoking gun of that. Ruby must have known what condition these kids were in because they had just posted content in that home. Like, she was there, and she might not have been there right then when the police arrived, but she was well aware of the condition these kids were being held under. There's no way there's like no plausible deniability because of some of these videos. Like, she definitely got too big for her britches and was getting away with way too much and felt way too comfortable. But then on the other side, that's like, thank goodness that she was posting all this stuff on the internet, so it's evidence. It can and will all be used against her in the court of law. You know? So again, this is why we got to keep the pressure on and keep talking about it and make sure people are aware, because there are still some people in the comments defending this woman, both these women, in just the situation that maybe, like, I don't know if it's even if they're aware or maybe they're not aware. whatever their reasoning for the defending, you know, there's an obvious issue there.
Now defunct 8 Passengers YouTube channel that once had more than 2 million subscribers. It's now been deactivated.
Eve has been amazingly well behaved for being in town.
But
for
you
like...
yelled at me.
Shh. The fact that I yell at my kids is a secret. We don't want our viewers to know.
When first responders arrived to the scene near Hildebrandt's home last week,
yeah, like if this is the restrained version of her, again, like I can't stress it enough. Like obviously she was yelling and screaming at them behind the camera, behind the scenes, and not including it. But then, you know, so you don't really even know. We have no idea how extreme this could be getting, like how this was for them. And then when they finally get on the camera, like why they look so defeated, why they look so hard done by, you know? There's so much more there that we've got to be able to consider and fill in those blanks. And, you know, because I'd rather be wrong about the abuse of a kid and calling out the abuse of a kid and be a little embarrassed about being wrong than be right the whole time in my gut and never said nothing about it. Do you know what I mean?
they found Franke's 12-year-old son emaciated with duct tape around his wrists and ankles.
This kid is obviously...
It's okay. I don't realize how many times they go and repeat this in some of these segments, but I guess like it is what it is, and it's part of it, and you know, but because we've already run through her here, we don't need to keep going.
While investigating a nearby home, officials found additional children in the same condition. 4 children were taken to the Department of Child and Family Services.
Oh, that's the thing too, because there were only 2 of them were her kids, and as far as I knew, there was one other 14-year-old. But I guess this is again with some of the news sources, it gets a little mixed up down the line. So if there's 2 other children that were not Ruby's, who are these? Like, I guess we don't need to speculate who they are, but why does she have these other children here at the home? Why were Ruby's children here? Why were they all here together, tied up together? Like, if this woman is trying to do the YouTube thing and trying to film videos, and if some people have suggested that the reason for her restraining and detaining them would have been because they may have been an interference to the recording sessions. But in that case, like, they're both like pretty comfortable, well-off people with the money, and I'm sure there's church things going on around. There's certain things around that the kids could have been sent somewhere for a few hours for a play date or to the babysitter, you know. So then it kind of calls into question what exactly was really going on there, and then why the kid, you know, was on a great escape and like, go get my sister. I can't tell you, it's my own fault, but go get my sister out of there, you know.
And both Franke and Hildebrandt were taken into custody, eventually charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse.
Hey, 314,
And then this is just the police dispatch stuff that's, again, reconfirming, like, there's all this evidence that this is what these people witnessed, this is what happened. Like, there's got to be some, like, that's all going to be admissible in the court of law, I'm very certain. Mostly certain. I can't say expert certain, but fairly certain.
But this isn't the first time Ruby Franke's name has made headlines, specifically around alleged child abuse. In 2020, the mother of 6 posted a video to her YouTube page titled, "What We Haven't Told You." In the video, she explained her teenage son, Chad, had been sleeping on a beanbag for months.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October. And they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago.
During the video, Franke had her son explain why the privilege of a bedroom was taken away.
Oh, I'll give you the reason why.
I'm sorry, but a young person, any male or female, going through puberty that is a teenager, needs their privacy. They deserve to have a room to sleep in, and whether some kids gotta share a room, whatever, but I mean, you deserve to have a space that is your space that you can sleep comfortably and safely and, you know, privately. Like, you gotta imagine, like, that on its own is a sleep deprivation thing, because there's all kinds of different noises going on in the house, or if anybody gets up in the night, or any other motion in the house is more likely to wake you up if you're sleeping in the middle of the living room versus if you're upstairs in your room with the door closed. You know what I mean? So there's so many other factors, I think, to this that we got to make sure we peel it open and look at it, like withholding food, sleep deprivation, constant stress, constant, you know, cruel and unusual punishments, constant just bickering and nagging at them about, like, she got the one kid to do 10 push-ups because he left his socks in the yard before, and he was coming to go, or he was gonna go start getting ready for football, and she's like, no, before you go anywhere. And then chases him down with the camera, like, oh, no, this is content. This is content. Better get on it. Like, it's just disgusting.
I lost my bedroom. I think so. I think this is the reason. At least this is the reason that's been in my head. It's pretty funny, but now that I look back, I mean, it's pretty depressing.
No, we never told.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not even really sure why, and it's depressing to look back on. And he kind of starts to laugh, and like, then Ruby right away jumping down his throat, like, yeah, you think it's funny, like, and this is the moment that I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but I'm supposing that this is probably what led to him being sent to the wilderness camp. Like, if you don't appreciate your bedroom, now you're gonna sleep in the woods. You know, like, you're not grateful or whatever. Like, she was always pushing being grateful and the truth and taking responsibility and independence and like, oh, the 6-year-old didn't make her own lunch and bring it with her, that's her fault, she can starve. You know, like, all these things along the way, they're like, are you kidding? Like, this is, who is this woman and who let her have children, you know?
Our viewers.
I woke Russell up at 2 in the morning and told him that we're going to Disneyland and he has to pack. And he got up and made his bed all neatly and then packed all his clothes in a suitcase. And then he walked out the door and I'm like, Russell, he was like, what? And he's all happy. Has his sunglasses on.
Chad goes on to explain he told his brother it was a joke before pulling another prank on him.
I was like, we're not going to Disneyland. And he started crying and hitting me. And then he went back to bed in tears and then...
So that was...
And then, do you see her face change too? Like, when all the kids were like, oh, you know, trying to make light of the whole silliness of the whole thing, like how ridiculous that he was just like, had his room taken away for 7 months over whatever, if this was the reason. All the kids are having a little moment like, oh yeah, that was kind of funny. Like, oh, it's silly now. Like, we can have a laugh about it now. And right away her face changes, just like, how dare you feel any joy? How dare there be children's laughter and joy? Like, how can I snuff this out? And then right away, like, oh, you know, if you didn't get it, if you think it's funny still, like, and then of course all the kids are like, oh my God, run, quiet, it's about to explode, you know?
Was not the reason you lost your room, but that was...
Well, the other reason is because I pointed a BB gun at his face.
Pointed a BB gun at his face and hung him on the basketball.
That's also not great, but where do you think he learns this behavior from? Where is he learning the behavior to be mean-spirited to the siblings? Like, it's almost bound to go down the line, you know, in such a way, and maybe, like, also that's, like, some brotherly stuff, you know, it's a little bit funny. And who knows, hopefully the BB gun wasn't loaded. Like, I don't think that any of that gunplay stuff should be a thing. That you know, that's not okay. But still, I don't think that constitutes taking away a bedroom for several months and then sending them out to the woods for a minimum of 49 days. Mind you, this camp, their minimum is 49 days, and it can cost upwards of $50,000. So, like, they're willing to pay to punish this kid's big money to go real punish them. For, I still don't really know exactly why they would deserve such a harsh punishment, you know. And then on the other end too, he had really enjoyed the camp, which some kids have come back from these sorts of camps and these different facilities feeling that they'd been abused, where he was like having the time of his life out there, which just goes to show how much more entrapped he must have felt in this home. Like, and then stripped of privacy, stripped of individuality, stripped of his contact to the outside world, stripped of all these personal liberties that a young growing teen boy is gonna need to have to, you know, to be able to grow and develop into a well-adapted man, you know, and or for the other kids, well-adapted women, ladies, whatever they want to identify as. At this point, you know, whatever, as long as you're not hurting kids or each other or whatever.
Franke then stepped in, explaining why she felt her decision to take away her son's bedroom was justified.
Chad showed that he was not able to manage himself sharing a bedroom with Russell.
So when we moved, the bigger room in the big...
Well, yeah, there also is a big age gap there, but I mean, this isn't, like, what do you... And again, already, now that we know these allegations she was trying to put out, too, that we're going to get to here later in the stream, she's almost laying the foundation here too of like you couldn't handle it. Well, probably having like a 10-year-old and then like a 16-year-old sharing a room is probably not the most, you know, and with the kind of money and room and stuff that they've got, I don't see why they would be having to share a room in that instance. Then like, okay, it's not working for you to share the room, so okay, the older one's gonna go and sleep in the living room, and then we're gonna give the little kid the big bedroom with the bathroom, which the adult, they're more like the teens coming into their own and, you know, figuring themselves out and going through all these changes. They should have more of their own privacy and their own space. So it's like she's like that. It's the dynamic there is so skewed that no wonder he's like almost laughing like, I just don't get it. I don't know, but I'm still alive. Thank goodness. I don't know. I'm here, but I don't know.
Was automatically his, and I didn't have a room, but we like put one on hold for me.
So a lot of you are like, hey, that's not fair because Chad got the lesser bedroom and Russell got the bigger bedroom. Russell got the big bedroom and Chad got the smaller bedroom. And Russell's bigger bedroom also had a bathroom. But what you guys didn't know was Chad didn't get any room. He didn't get anything. He was sleeping on the floor in the family room.
Yeah, what? So because he wasn't grateful enough to have the shoebox room versus like that whole thing is like, and so then it's another reason to punish him, another reason to punish him. And for anything that they're going to start speaking up on is a punishment, because apparently they're not allowed to have their own thoughts or whatever. Like, you know, I can only speculate on what's going through Ruby's head. I don't really know. Can't really understand this woman still, but we can understand what might need to be done to better prevent this from happening to more kids in the future. You will say about the no to the BB gun. Yeah, because you never know if there's still a BB lodged in the thing, or like there's all kinds of safety concerns there with that. So of course that of course, you know, but again, where do you think that, like, some of those mean-spirited behaviors that are starting to come up in, like, these pranks where they're a YouTube channel, all kinds of these families do prank each other and do silly things too, and maybe he thought he would get a praise from the mother by setting up these funny little pranks, and she'd come out with the camera like, oh, that's funny, like, why don't we just do more fun-spirited things that are sort of like a prank instead of punishing each other, you know? Maybe this was his attempt to, like, as with Jesse's interview that we're going to get more deeper into it, we're going to touch on it in this stream tonight, and we're going to set up and go deeper on that in another night. But in her interview about, you know, as much as it's like these people are harming you and it's this crazy thing that you want to belong to your tribe, you want to find your way to fit in, and for certain families there's certain preferences, whether it's politics or sports or whatever, what have you, the religious factors. There's always going to be a wanting to belong and wanting to fit in with your tribe, no matter how much of a damage it is to you, you know, especially when you're a kid and you're just trying to figure it out. Because what else are you going to know? You're just trying to survive. You're trying to become a human that fits with the other humans in your sphere. But sometimes you don't fit there, and then sometimes you're being punished because you don't fit there, in the case with Jesse and their interview. So it's a whole thing, guys, and it's gonna get darker still, I suspect, but we're, you know, thank you for being here for it, everybody. All the new folks join us. Hey, Heidi, welcome. I guess I should catch up with the chat here a little bit, but we got a lot to cover, so I want to make sure we make it through everything here, and then at the end we will do a little more touching base and chit chat and discussing. What's up, Jordan? We got a few new folks in here in the chat. Welcome, and any new lurkers, welcome to you guys as well. And again, you know, if you guys are welcome to join in on the discussion. We're all pretty good folks here, the regulars here. We got a good bunch. We do have, you know, a particular understanding of complex trauma and the like, so we're all very supportive, non-judgmental. Everybody is welcome. We are here. And now you are too. So thanks for being here.
And he just got the bedroom back, and it's because he's shown up consistently without bullying the kids.
Throughout this same video, Franke boasts that...
Okay, but who's been bullying the kids? Like, oh, nobody here is allowed to bully the kids except me, is pretty much what she's saying here. Like, because they're getting bullied all the time. Everybody's getting bullied, and he's thinking, oh, I'm getting older now. Maybe I can start fitting in as an adult and, like, be part of the other end of this and stop getting it put on me all the time, you know? Because being the oldest, too, you got to imagine he's just been here through the whole thing. And with Sherry, with her interviews and her statements, everything that she's been through, and her putting together her own compilation of evidence and documentation to, you know, support the abuse that's happened to her and everything she witnessed over the years. The two older kids, you know, they're starting to come out and have their own voice, and we got to be here to support them, and like, we believe you. All you kids out there, I know you probably aren't watching, that's okay, but any kids that are having a situation like this, anybody that had a situation like this growing up, not that there's any kids in here, but to your inner children, folks, we see you, we hear you, we believe you, we are here for it, all right? Because this shit's got to stop. Any layer of this shit, any degree of this shit, like, it's the time's up.
Many of her children have been without their cell phones for months.
Chad hasn't had a flip phone, a smartphone, any kind of phone, and it's been over a year. And I still have no intention of returning a phone. Abby, we took the phone away from Abby in November. And you may never get the phone back.
Probably not. Franke then tells viewers this choice affects her just as much as it affects her children.
When you make these choices with your family to take things away, as a parent, you really do want them to have these things. And it's been so difficult to take a phone away, to take a bedroom away, to take iPads away, to take access away.
Like, these poor friggin' kids, man. Like, still, again, no matter how many times I've had to watch this and go over this for the sake of the coverage, like, they're dead inside. They're dead inside or dying inside, you know? Like, their faces, like, they've just given up. She's like, yep, never get my phone back. Yep, it is what it is. Like, let's just fall in line for Moss so we don't get it worse than we're already getting it, you know?
Hurts me just as much as it hurts my kids.
Throughout the video, though, multiple of the children...
Somebody get her an Academy Award. Because I don't think you get any hurt for this, because there's so many of these clips where you're grinning. You're grinning to the video, to the screen, and it's like, at this point, she's already started getting so much backlash and stuff, so she's really got to put on her best performance of, like, it's for the best of the kids. It's for the best of the situation. We're doing our best. Oh, everything's the best.
Describe being lonely without any friends.
And now I have no friends.
You can play with friends.
No, like, I don't have friends.
I don't have friends either.
I literally, like, told my friends I'm not hanging out with them anymore.
Because
they say some pretty messed up stuff.
Yeah. That's, like, the other tragic thing, too, is just, like, they're so alienated and isolated. Like, again, everything's looking so nice and perfect and well-groomed, well-adapted, whatever. It all looks great on the outside, but these poor kids, like, and I think this is the clip, too, where the little boy mentions not having any friends, too, and it's so freaking sad. And there were reports, too, of the little girl wandering, like, when they were supposed to be homeschooled, she kind of, like, dropped off on that, and then the little girl, the littlest girl, the youngest one, was wandering around the neighborhood, like, looking for friends, knocking on doors. The neighbors reported, and they're like, oh, sorry, like, our kids are at school, and she's like, oh, yeah, that's okay, I'll wait. Like, just begging for any outside connection or attention or friendship or just, you know, food, maybe. Like, hey, maybe if I hang out with these kids, I can have a snack. You know, these poor friggin' kids.
I've noticed that you've been hiding from me, and you are feeling a lot of embarrassment.
Hiding from you out of fear, I would say, but maybe also whatever the embarrassment. The whole situation is uncomfortable, no matter how, no matter you cut it. Oh man, maybe it's time to take us a break. Maybe we take a little break. We'll finish off this clip and then we're gonna take a little break. It looks like, yeah, we're just past the hour anyway, so it's a good time for us all to take a break and refill our coffee or beverages, whatever we got going. Stretch your legs, use facilities. But yeah, so we'll finish off this one little clip here, and then we'll take our couple-minute break for everybody. We can take a second to absorb this and just shake the ick off, shake off the stomach, the bad stomach feelings for these kids.
And shame. I don't know. You tell me what you're feeling.
Mad.
Mad?
Because I really won't get anything this summer. I won't be able to go anywhere, you know, I don't have any friends.
The video ends as Franke kisses her son, who's visibly...
And again, too, we've all mentioned, but I will mention it once again for any new folks joining us and getting caught up on the latest here. Note the dark circles under the eyes. This would be not only an indicator, I personally would say, I could be wrong, but it's just as a personal suggestion and as for my understanding of these types of situations. It could be also an indicator of the sleep deprivation, like living in these kinds of high pressure, scary, anxious type environments can really throw off your regulatory system. So then during the day you feel exhausted, but then at night you have trouble sleeping, and then these kids are up every day and then getting the camera in their face, and all of that is like emotionally draining and exhausting, and just it rocks your system. Like I mentioned earlier, it just rocks your whole system, your whole everything, throws it all off. So like whatever's going on here, you know, right here is when people should have really been like, hey, no, we need to make contact with these kids and this family. Like, this is when something should have been done. And obviously they were already trying. They had the CPS showing up there, they had cops showing up there, but a lot of times, like, they wouldn't come to the door, or there would be like just whatever, they kind of throw it off in a way, or talk their way out of it in a way, or I don't know how. I just don't know. I don't understand, but this is what needs to change right here, right now. Is this like, this is the early indicators. These are the early warning signs that something is really wrong. Like, look at this kid's eyes. And I mean, some people have been mentioning like, oh, I should blur the kids' faces, and no. You know what? And in some cases, abso-freaking-lutely. But these kids are already circulated all over the internet. Everybody knows the kids. They know what they look like. And this now is a learning opportunity to really take a freaking look at these kids' faces. Look at that face. Look at his eyes. What do you see in there? What do you see in there? You know? Get to know that look, so we don't keep having this shit go on. There is no excuse in this day and age, and with the level of like surveillance society we're starting to live in, and with everybody sharing and exchanging so much information online, like, whew, okay. Sorry guys, I'm yelling at you now. It's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault. We're all learning at the same time, because this is such a new thing. These kids are the pioneers on a new frontier of child cruelty and labor in a way, and this is why we need to really study this close and really see it for what it is as soon as possible. Okay? So anyway, sorry, I'm not trying to be like lecturing you guys, but a little bit also at the same time. But welcome, Terminated. Welcome, everybody. Rebecca is still here. Any new folks joining us, welcome. Sorry I'm yelling at you, but this is, you know, I can't stress it enough. Can't stress it enough.
Set.
And I love you with all my heart.
In a separate video, Franke explains her then 6-year-old daughter Eve forgot to bring her lunch to school.
I just got a text message from Eve's teacher, and
wait, no, we were gonna take a break. Sorry guys. So yeah, we're gonna take a quick 2 to 3 minute break here. So yeah, like I said, do what you gotta do. Use facilities, stretch your legs, get your snack, and I will be right back. Okay, let me just I'll catch up. I'll quick skim over the chat here before we dive back into it. Circadian rhythm is often always have dark circles in my eyes. Often afraid of sleeping. Yeah. Yeah. See, like, and then the long-term effects going right into adulthood too. Like, if you go through this for such a prolonged time, and it's just like becomes all you know, that sets your system for life, you know. And then it takes so much to be able to undo that and to re-put it the way it's supposed to, you know, to retrain your brain's neuroplasticity and retrain those coping mechanisms and those threat responses that in once you're an adult and you're out and you're safe and things aren't that way anymore, there's still certain things that can trigger the threat response, and you get the surge of adrenaline come through you, and it's like nothing's even happening, but then, you know, you're all you know, it can still, that shit can follow you, man. Like, it can devastate your whole rest of your life. And that's, I guess, what we were trying to make the biggest point about here. Like, the amount of damage it's already done to these poor kids, man. Like, I can only hope they're going to get the care they need and, you know, not end up back with the dad anyway after a thorough investigation. But, yeah. Breakfast is meant to be the most important meal of the day, especially at school, so you can think properly. And sleep is important so you can grow. Absolutely. Like, in every way, it was just their spirits were being stepped upon, you know? Crushing these little kids' spirits. But anyways, yeah, if you haven't already, guys, consider giving the stream a like and share, subscribe, all those things help support the stream. If you want to go one step further, there are links in the description to donate, and then links to other things that we're speaking about in the stream today, and how to get to the next stream. All those things should be in there. I'll have to double check before we end it, but keeping up with it as best I can here. But anyways, let's get back to the main event, shall we? Where'd you go? There you are.
She said that Eve did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school? This happens quite often when you're raising children.
She then tells viewers her daughter.
How often are your kids at school without lunches? Because I don't think that's the norm for most parents that are giving the love and care that their kids deserve. How often are they going without lunches, Ruby? And why are you making a point of this now? Like, that's the other thing, yeah, the lunch thing, the food withholding thing. Like, some kids are starving, and it's like due to circumstances in poverty or just different circumstances. Not that that's okay either, but there is no reason for any of these kids going out without any meals or snacks or whatever they need.
Teacher was uncomfortable that Eve may have no lunch that day.
I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch, and it would ease her discomfort if I came to the school with a lunch. But I responded and just said, Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did.
Yeah, okay, we believe you, Ruby. Yeah, good point too, Cynthia, and welcome to the chat. It's narcissistic parenting. Oh, absolutely. There's definitely a lot of qualities there, a lot of tendencies, sociopathic almost tendencies, but it's not a diagnosis, I can't say anything for sure, but definitely she does seem to be exhibiting some of the qualities of that.
Lunch.
Instead of bringing Eve's lunch to school, Franke says she hopes her daughter goes hungry.
So
Oh, I'm not sure if that's in this, but yeah, if you guys want to check out like the full extent of the emotional violence and the psychological warfare that I keep speaking of, I did do a video about that, and you know, once you line it all up together and you start to notice, you know, over the time and between the children, the different reactions they're having, you know, the one kid started getting like a nervous tick. There's different things showing up along the way that would be those early signs, those early warning signs and early detection signs that this is the stuff that we got to be as aware of as possible. you know, and not just like, obviously there's some of these videos that it's like they kind of have the funny moments, the cringy, the whatever. I put this video together, it's literally just the emotional violence and psychological warfare. And I will warn you, I mean, there's a warning at the beginning of the video, but I'm going to warn you anyway, like, trigger warning AF for anybody that suffered any kind of psychological abuse as a kid, or any emotional, mental, spiritual attacks, you know. This is for you, you know, like, this warning's for you guys. It might rock your system a little bit, because some of it's, like, very, it's very upsetting, it's very disturbing, and, it's all the things that we need to be able to detect it with more of these singular incidents rather than waiting for it to all be compiled together and waiting for some big thing to happen and reacting to after these kids have already been harmed, you know. We got to be more proactive. So this is how we learn, this is how we get it, and like, we got to learn at a faster pace because things are getting dark at a faster pace out there.
The outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry, and hopefully nobody gives her food and nobody steps in and gives her a lunch.
On other occasions, Franke posted videos about withholding food as well.
Well, and there's that too, and then they started being limited from being able to play with other kids, or just like by process started becoming more alienated from the other kids and the other families, and like, the interview with Jesse sort of paints a more clearer picture about that too, about how the different dynamics between folks once you're labeled as the one that needs to be punished, you know. But yeah, like having them taken out of school and stuff, and then having things change, sending them away, you know, things changing around, her taking him up to Jodi's place after Kevin moved out, or she kicked him out, or whatever the heck happened there. Further dividing them, constantly further dividing them from outside influence and outside anyone that could intervene. So definitely to avoid because of course they were getting lots of the calls, and there was a few times where the CPS would show up with police because they were having such a hard time making contact with them.
And my kids are literally starving. I hesitate to say this because it's gonna sound like I'm like a mean barbarian, but I told the kids, I said, I'm not even gonna let you eat breakfast until you get your...
Oh no, not a mean barbarian. Barbarians are nice where I come from. Like, what are you saying? Barbarian is barbarian. Savage, barbarian, barbaric. Oh, like, awful, awful. Like, there's no reason your kid should be starving.
Done.
After these videos were posted, a Change.org petition was created by viewers hoping to send child protective services to the Franke family home. Nearly 18,000 people signed the petition, but the case was closed.
Yeah, that was kind of the beginning of it all though, right, Jamie? The Shaytard stuff, like that's, you know, and I've been trying to think of that family for a while because they kind of disappeared, and I couldn't remember what the main channel had been called, but I'd been kind of getting like, you know, reminiscent of that and how that was sort of the beginning, and looking where it's got to now. Like, we had so much time in between to do something about this, and obviously, you know, it's been however many years. Most of us that are here now were younger then, and just, you know, we didn't necessarily have this platform, and we didn't necessarily have the understanding, whatever. But at this point, there's no excuse that people don't have a better understanding of this, and you know, because like the viewers, the other creators, all these people that are here watching this stuff, we all have a responsibility in such a way to really, at the end of the day, protect all the little ones, for everybody's kids, for your kids, anyone's kids, whatever, you know. It's not about just these kids. It's there's a bigger thing going on. And then the Mormon thing, we're gonna get into the Mormon thing more specifically, but as we get farther down the line here. So yeah, let's keep moving because we don't want to get again too off track, and we got a lot to cover this evening.
Insufficient evidence. After that, both Franke and her husband Kevin spoke to Insider about this incident. Franke told reporters, quote, "It was just so malicious. They knew what they were doing was out of context. They were purely seeking to throw hate. That was their only objective." She addressed similar criticism in one of her videos.
Online who hate me, who would like to cancel me, who would like to see me either burn in hell, as I have told, or disappear off the face of the earth.
She said it. She said it. But I mean, like, this is it too, is like, again, to refocus on, like, somebody on the surface looks so together and they're telling you, oh, this isn't real, this is just everybody spreading hate, and they just don't understand my style of parenting, and, da-da-da-da-da. She does her whole heartfelt little video, and then everybody's just like, oh yeah, true, okay, yeah, they don't understand. That's okay, I understand, right? So then they feel more part of it. They feel a little more included. And I guess too, like, this is part of how it was gone unchecked for so long.
And I'm not going anywhere.
Both Franke and Hildebrandt now face 6 charges.
I'm not going anywhere, she says. Little do you know. I don't think you're going anywhere, but not for the reason that you want. Oh, good. The irony.
Of aggravated child abuse. If convicted, they could face upwards of 15 years.
Oh, why are we freezing? Come on, computer. Let's not be like that. Hold on one sec.
Charges of aggravated child abuse. If convicted, they could face upwards of 15 years per each of those charges. Reporting for Law and Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
I have heard this term called mommy guilt quite a bit. Have you heard that, or maybe you use that term?
Yeah, I didn't realize that about the Shaytards, though, that they were also Mormon. I guess they weren't as open about it. It's not like, I don't know, like, it was a whole different time. And I just kind of remember hearing stuff about them, but, like, kind of being familiar with it a little bit. But, yeah, I didn't know that about it. And their oldest son just went and is on an LDS mission in Mexico. Interesting. See, and I started to wonder, too, like, some of them, it seems a little bit of a situation when they end up being sent away somewhere, like with Chad, you know, there was whatever situation, and then he's sent away to the wilderness camp, you know, like, there's so much of a, they'd rather send it away to be fixed than to work within it as a family unit to fix whatever the situation is, you know what I mean? Which, that's a whole thing to start another day, you know, because that gets into a whole nother deep dive in a different direction, but yeah, I've been meaning to look back kind of into the Shaytards and see what happened and turn to how those kids turned out and whatever. Like, that's been in the background of my mind since this came up. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot to keep up with too, right? There's so many different channels popping up every day, and like, and especially since the lockdowns and the restrictions there we had the last couple of years, how many more channels were popping up, and not just because of out of fun, like a lot of these families started, but out of like desperation, because people were losing their jobs and the kids had to stay home from school anyways, and like, how do you keep them busy? What do you do? And like, how do you gonna make ends meet? And all these different things, all these new factors that were also not a problem up to a certain point, you know? So then that sort of seems too where this all started going dark was like 2019, 2020 coming through the situation over the last couple of years, and now we're here, you know? So all of these families, all these people, and even just in general, without being put on the internet, that the boiling pot of stress that so many families were put under, you know? There's so many more layers. There's just so much stuff going on here that it would be irresponsible not to cover this and keep a close eye, and again, using it as an educational tool.
Every time I hear that term, I think, that doesn't make any sense to me.
That's Jodi Hildebrandt, the Utah woman accused of child abuse alongside YouTuber and mom of 6, Ruby Franke. Hildebrandt says she's a counselor, but who is she really?
Yeah, so this is where we're going to start going into the stuff with Jodi, where Ruby is awful, 100%, but Jodi is another level of evil that I can't even begin. But we're going to dive into it deeper. This gives you guys a little bit of a foundation, a little understanding what to expect on the next live stream. Not even sure exactly what day it's going to be just yet. Might be Wednesday. Just keep an eye out for it. I will set the event ahead of time, and then you guys can get notified about that. But the whole situation just with Jodi on her own is a lot. There's a lot going on there. She has a history here, and I think it's important that we understand that, the depth of that as well, and her connections within the church and the community, and how she was able to get away with her nonsense for so long. But we're going to go just a little bit at a time, because I don't want to, we don't need to shock anybody's system with the the details and the realities of these situations. We do want to keep it as objective and educational as possible, of course, right?
I'm Jodi Hildebrandt. So glad you're with us.
We investigate and tell you about the startling twist in the case involving Ruby Franke. Welcome to Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. I'm Anjanette Levy. Jodi Hildebrandt was taken into custody in Ivins, Utah last week after police said Ruby Franke's son climbed out of a window at her home with duct tape on his ankles and wrists. Police said the boy was malnourished and taken to the hospital. Hildebrandt and Franke face 6 counts of child abuse each. Neighbors and viewers of Franke's YouTube channel, 8 Passengers, say they've been concerned for years about how she treats her children.
Yeah, and literally like 3 years. Like at first, when I was initially covering this, I thought it was around 2 years from what I was gathering at first. But when you look and you go all the way, it's been about 3 years since people have started doing deep dives and these little compilations with the worst moments and trying to get it out there. You know, more and more people just trying to get the attention brought to this, and it's so upsetting that it took the kid escaping for himself and getting help for him damn self. That's the most heartbreaking part of this, that after all of that, it took him fighting for his life to escape the situation and running to who knows where. Like, he's in the middle of nowhere. It's not familiar with the area. They're not his neighbors. This was Jodi's home. This wasn't Ruby's home. So all these strange people around and up in the middle near the mountains, like middle of nowhere. Not really middle of nowhere, but kind of in the way for a child, that is. It's a middle of nowhere situation, you know? Like, you wouldn't know where to go or what to do, but in a panic, just start running, you know? Like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get my sister help. Like, that is, ugh. We're gonna do better. We gotta do better.
And get this, on Thursday, the Daily Mail is reporting that during a hearing over custody of Ruby Franke.
Oh, okay, also, P.S., warning here, trigger warning here. These are some heinous, I had mentioned a little bit earlier, but I'm gonna mention right now, there are some heinous allegations she's making against the children now, as part of, I guess, her defense of why she was doing what she was doing, why this was happening, or what the punishments were, why the whole time. I guess, like, now she's throwing the kids under the bus. It's 8 passengers under the bus, or six under the bus, whatever. I don't know who's driving the bus anymore, but it's going somewhere.
Minor children. She claimed that one of them molested their siblings and other neighborhood children over several years. The reporter said that Franke sobbed during the interview.
Which, this is sort of a pattern, too, with the Jodi situation, that when people are starting to question the punishment tactics or they're starting to question her therapeutic practices, she starts going and throwing crap out from the whatever, you know, like, and I can only speculate exactly what her tactics are here, but you can see some of these similarities in those other interviews that I've mentioned with former alleged victims of Jodi's, former clients that are alleged victims that are now going to be able to have their cases reopened and reassessed. And their stories, a lot of it corroborates, you know, a lot of it lines up in a way and matches up with some of this stuff that's happening in this case. And this is why we got to dig more into the Jodi situation too.
We know Franke is a mom of 6. We've seen her past videos, but who is Jodi Hildebrandt? We did some digging to find out. Hildebrandt founded Connections Classroom in 2007. Prior to Connections, she worked as a counselor at a drug and alcohol treatment center. Her LinkedIn page calls her a therapist and educator. Hildebrandt received a Master's of Science in Educational Psychology from the University of Utah in 2003.
So, and that's the thing too, we do need to start introducing people to, like, how well connected some of these folks are and how, you know, things, the dynamic of the community and the way things are done in a place like Utah that has such a fine line between church and state is very different than most places. And this woman was funded by the church in a lot of cases. Jessie, the niece, she alleges that the bishop, her bishop, Berger, I'm gonna have to double check the pronunciation on that, but the bishop was had been referring Jodi to other clients, and they would be clients in need, and so the payment and the funding for that, it would come out of the tithe, or whatever it's called. I believe it's a tithe or tithe. The money that the church has for people in need. So they were being funded and sent over to this woman, and then a lot of them had their lives they felt their lives were destroyed by this woman. They're alleging they were victims, and physically abusive too situations with the niece, that, right, like I mentioned earlier, just the conflict of interest and ethics code violations with treating a family relative friend, whatever. Like, there's, as a therapist, there's certain people you're not supposed to treat because it's not ethical. So not only that, but then how inhumane it was extreme. What this poor kid alleges happened to them when they were, the whole thing is messed up, and we're gonna get there. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but just more warnings that this does get darker, an awful lot darker real quick, but it is all important to the case, and just all these kids in this community, anybody that's been affected by either of these women, like there's so much more going on here.
Her bio on her connectionsclassroom.com page says, "My style is compassionate yet direct and clear of what is necessary to fully change and champion any addictive or self-destructive behavior, whether it be ravenous addictions, feelings of worthlessness or inadequacy, conflicts in relationships, intimacy problems, communication breakdowns, and frankly, any block that prevents having and creating peace and joy."
Which, on the surface, that sounds great. That all sounds fantastic. That's what people need. But again, with these alleged victims, with their statements and what they're claiming, what she's decided is an addictive thing, or what she's decided is a bad thing or a sinful thing or whatever, the way that she gets to the root is not, it's called spiritual surgery or something to that effect, and it's kind of messed up. And again, we're going to dive far deeper into it. This is going to end up being more of like an introduction to the alleged victim stories. Adam Steed and Jesse that have stepped forward now that, feeling safe finally to step forward now that she's behind bars, because they do mention that Jodi's a very powerful woman in the community, and she's sadistic and scary. Like, they're terrified, so, and it's all allegedly, who knows, I don't know, whatever. They're going to take it to court, hopefully, and pursue their own justice in those individual matters. But this we got to work our way into it, because it does get dark fast, and there is a lot of different elements to it that are going to help you guys understand the Ruby Franke case, and just the issue in and around these types of situations. It's a big issue in Utah. Like, this is not just an isolated incident. There's so much more going on beneath the surface, and the troubled teen industry, and with the way that the different school systems are connected with, there's just certain layers where when the kids are the most in need, that they seem to be disregarded and dismissed and ignored, and that needs to stop. We are here. We see them. We hear them. So now what are we going to do about it, right?
Here's a clip from Connection's Instagram account from last November. It's Jodi Hildebrandt talking about how parents can help their children when they act out.
So many of us that are parents, it's like, I don't want to have to track them down. I don't want to have to just, take everything away from them. And it's like, you're not taking things away from them. What you're doing is you've handed them things that they're not managing. And so it's your job to make sure that the first thing they manage is themselves. Like, they understand how to manage themselves. They know how to be responsible for themselves.
Unlike Jodi and Ruby Franke, though, they don't seem to be able to be responsible or manage themselves. Really, at this point, I mean, I'd love to see how they're gonna try to get them, defend themselves on this, and other than these heinous allegations they're trying to throw around here. And that kind of has got me wondering too in different ways, but again, we're not going to dive too far into that today. We're just kind of going into the introduction to the deeper dive that we're going to go into later this week, and as leading up to the next trial, the next hearing.
They know how to not blame. They know how to get curious, which means humble. They know how to ask questions. They know how to say, that doesn't feel right. Can you help me understand? They know how to do all that. And when you give them activities, or you give them opportunities that they engage in where they can't manage themselves, they're only going to become more and more unmanageable inside of these activities.
Hildebrandt also...
Which, what activities are we talking about here? Are we talking about, doing push-ups because you left your socks on the lawn? What kind of activities? Like, I'd like to know more of whose standard and by what level of standard are we considering them to not be managing the basic needs that you're supposed to give them as the responsible adult that you're supposed to be when you have children. Like, failure to thrive is an abusive thing. If you're not providing the basic needs, that is a crime, just on its own. So, welcome Heidi, welcome Lucinda, welcome new folks joining us, welcome any new lurkers joining in. Feel free to join the conversation.
Talked last year about what sex should be like between two people who are married.
If we're going to be sexual, that we do it inside the institution, the constructs of a marriage. And not just a marriage, just, I go and I get married, but a marriage between a man and a woman who love God, which means they individually love God. So there's no lust in your marriage. It's, I love me, I love God, and so therefore I truly love you, which means I will never take.
Well, and so I can see though why if in fact that she was allegedly being funded and supported and referred to by the church, I can see why they were into it. Like, on the surface, all the wording sounds just the same along the lines of what they preach, But I don't think, and if they did, I don't know, who knows for sure, but the practice versus the theory are completely different things. And it still makes no sense, exactly. Like, overall, it doesn't make any sense, especially with what we know now. But, I can see where on the surface, where if this slides across, say, a bishop's desk or whatever, that they're like, oh yeah, that's all the values that we support and share and need and love and and okay, yeah, onward. She's been, successful for this many years and worked in the community and on paper, I can see where maybe they overlooked some of this. But, I mean, either way, it all needs to be investigated. All of it. Everybody. Anyone that was referred to her needs to be checked on. Anyone that referred people to her needs to be checked on. Like, I really hope they're investigating this, to the full depth. I mean, there's no way they're not seeing all these different connections that the internet's putting together, Like, we're all seeing it. We all get it. Now, let's just hope that they're making up for and compensating for their lack of effort and for their ignorance for so long to this situation. Hopefully now that this is the makeup time, and they're going to go deep on it and make sure that the justice for anybody that was involved or affected by either of these women.
I will never use you to make me feel better.
Jodi Hildebrandt claims to have counseled thousands of people over the years. She says she's counseled families of all ages with her unique style of educating about the power of choice and the need for impeccable honesty. A 6-week individual leadership training goes for $795 on her website. Company training.
Like, all these people need to be contacted and, offered reparations or something, some sort of assessment, like an evaluation for any damage caused. Like, I don't know, man, but this is, again, like I said, it's so much more far-reaching than just the 8 passengers and their audiences and their, the people following them and encouraging and supporting it. This goes so much deeper. So this is why we're doing a bit of the introductory, just to get you guys get just caught up and on the same page. And then when we go deeper on it, that way it's all making sense, and it's not, because it's a lot. It is a lot at once, and I've been trying to make sure I can space it and present it in a way that's not super overwhelming to those that may have lesser understanding of the overall, Anyways, moving on.
It's nearly $15,000. Hildebrandt and Franke appeared to be business partners. The Contact Us page on the Connections website lists Ruby Franke as the contact. Photos on the website show the two together. Ruby Franke is listed as a certified mental fitness trainer at Connections. She produces content for social media that focuses on empowering parents and children to live their truth, according to the affidavit filed in support.
Okay, well, if we're going to talk about living some truths and taking responsibility and all these things they preached, they should be super happy to take what's coming to them, if in fact, whatever happens, and if they can be proven guilty by the court of law.
Of the child abuse charges, 2 of Franke's children had been at Hildebrandt's home last week. A 12-year-old boy climbed out of the window, asking a neighbor for food and water. Duct tape was on his wrists and ankles, and he had deep lacerations from being restrained. Then police said Ruby Franke's 10-year-old daughter was found in the home as well, malnourished.
Oh, why are you doing this again? Keeps tripping up here. Hold on. This too, though, I do want to just point out, like, that moment, like, I feel like they're kind of glazing over the escape portion of it. Like, this was probably, like, a great escape, like, for his life type of feeling, like, trying to get out and then get away before anyone could notice he was gone, so he can go and get help for his little sister. You know, and in the Jessie interview, she goes deep into, like, when her great escape from Jodi, her allegedly, I gotta keep saying allegedly, because it's still, that's something that's gonna have to go to the court of law on its own too. But yeah, no, like, a lot of this is, again, lots of layers.
10-year-old daughter was found in the home as well, malnourished.
Come on now, hold on. It's so heavy duty, the computer don't want to do it.
And that she was aware of what was happening to her children.
Welcome to Connections. I'm Jodi Hildebrandt. So glad you're with us. If you're like me, you've had pain in your life. It could be from a divorce, work conflicts, relationship issues with children, grandchildren, spouse, anxiety, depression, or fear that you don't understand, feelings that you're not enough or that you're unlovable.
The irony of this is palpable as well, and we're gonna come back and revisit it after doing, like, this deep dive thing and come back to, like, this is on the surface. Again, it all looks very well put together. It seems like, you know, good heart and good intentions, but, you know,
is the solution. You can change. You can experience feelings of being whole, centered, liberated, connected, empowered, and free. Come and see for yourself. There's something here for you.
oh, yeah, it's creepy though too. It's creepy knowing what they've been, just for what they've been arrested for, without even knowing what's coming next here.
Franke and Hildebrandt are Mormons, and they talk about God in many of their videos and what they say he wants. This week, Jessie Hildebrandt, Jodi's niece, spoke on YouTube about her aunt.
Jodi and my parents had a conversation. Jodi told them to leave me with them, or me to leave.
Okay, so again, here I'm gonna throw in another warning for you guys. This is Hefty Doofty, and this is the niece, Jodi's niece, that again, she should have never been treating as a therapist to begin with, let alone what this person ends up, the allegations. It's just, it's heart-wrenching, all of it. I don't really have any other words for it.
With her, and
so this is like, okay, so I do want to say also that this is just going to be a sample of what we're going to dive deeper into in the coming days. Here, I'll go back a little bit. This is just kind of to touch on it, to give you, and then you have a few days to kind of prepare it and absorb it too, because again, it's a lot at once. It's a lot of different, it's a lot of information, it's a lot of different horrible things to hear at once. So, you know, we're going to take it easy and take it one step at a time, and we're all in it together.
Me with them, or me to leave me with her, and for them to just go, and to not say anything, and to just pack up the things and just go. And so a few hours later, I get a knock on the door. I was asleep, and it was Jodi and my grandparents telling me that my family had left and I wasn't going with them, and that my life was about to change pretty dramatically. But everything was revolved around my worth. So anything that gave me a sense of worth, I was not allowed to have anymore. I had really long hair that I loved. Had to cut it all off.
Like, and this is like, you got to think too, it's all these little things to start, and again, the early warning signs, these little things, and they keep turning up the heat, turning up the pressure, turning it up, and try to just kill the spirit. This poor kid was like an art student, or wanted to do music, wanted to do things that didn't align with the family's interests, what the family's conformed little cookie cutter outline was. And they were always pushing back, trying to be more of their own self and asking too many questions and just being, you know, not conforming. So, anyway, sorry, we'll continue. We'll let them speak for themselves here, but
because it gave me a sense of worth. Going to school gave me a sense of worth. Not allowed to do it.
With me to discuss Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke is someone who's covering the case out there in Utah. She is Amanda Gilbert. She's a reporter with KUTV out in Salt Lake City, and she is actually on her way to Ivins, Utah. Amanda, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
yeah, I was pleased to see that too, and that's why I was like, you know what, this is a good introduction to it. And like, as some of you guys know, like going through that Jesse interview has been like a lot. There is a lot there. It is a very lengthy interview as well, so I'm doing my best to trim it down, get the most important highlight portions to touch on, and also adding in some extra pause breaks and warnings to make sure that there's a few parts where I needed to just step away and take a moment and absorb it, and just let that like the craziness of it be able to even understand the depth of the situation. It's all kinds of bad feelings in the gut and the heart and the soul, and so this is the introduction, and then we'll go deeper in it, and it's gonna be rough, but again, it's very important, very very relative to the case, relative to the whole situation, the overarching dynamics that, like Ruby's cousin mentioned, the overarching dynamics within the family, within the community, and so on. This is we're just scraping the surface. We're just at the tip of the iceberg right now.
Amanda, what can you tell us about Jodi Hildebrandt? We kind of did a deep dive on her before we brought you in, but what do you know about her? This is somebody who professes to be a psychologist, a counselor of sorts, somebody who can help families and children.
That's right, and she's kind of being described as Ruby Franke's business partner. What we're most interested in at the moment is that most of Franke's kids, when they were found, or at least some of them, were found actually in Hildebrandt's house in Ivins, Utah, where we're headed. So the 911 call, a lot of the reports that are making national attention about where Franke's son was first found, all actually take place in Ivins, which is about 4 hours from where Ruby Franke's house in Springville, Utah is. So we're trying to get a better picture of, why were these kids in Hildebrandt's house? The 911 call and scanner traffic audio reveals some of what was inside Hildebrandt's house when they went inside. That will probably be a big part of the investigation. So that's the big part of what we're focused on right now.
So Ruby Franke lives closer to Salt Lake City, Utah. Her business partner with In Connections, Jodi Hildebrandt, lives, you're saying, 4 hours away. I know you're on your way there right now. It's going to take you some time to get there. But they said they had a YouTube video. The police in their affidavit said they have a YouTube video that shows that Ruby Franke was in Jodi Hildebrandt's home 2 days before the children were discovered. There was not only the boy, the 12-year-old, who climbed out of the window, there was also a 10-year-old girl in the house who was malnourished. So they have...
And the 2 other children that are now being reported. But holy cow, I just noticed we're already on the second hour here, so I do want to give us an opportunity to take ourselves a little break here, give us a couple minutes, get another snack, get another drink, whatever you got to do, take 5, whatever, and we will be right back. back. Just a quick little breaky for you. But we do got a lot to cover, so we don't want to muck around too much here. We want to get through it and make sure we keep on keeping on. Okay, where'd you go? There you are. Okay, and before we go right back into it here, though, let me catch up with the chat a little bit and touch on a couple things here. Every person that ever signed up with Connections deserves a refund. Yeah, first off, and just like an mental evaluation, I would say, or any therapy they've needed as a result of therapy that they've received through Jodi, that they should have that covered. Definitely cult leader and thought they would get away with it. Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the videos that they had posted too, just a few days before the arrest, they were talking about having a dirty little secret and about the truth and like this whole weird little speech that now that we see what's going on there, like it all is so surreal. It's just so outlandish, but it's what it is, right?
Evidence that she saw her children, apparently saw what was going on. We're assuming she condoned it.
Yeah, in fact, scanner traffic audio reveals that when they went inside Hildebrandt's house, law enforcement describes finding some type of panic room inside, underneath, or in some proximity to the garage that the Ruby Franke's son talks about and kind of directed law enforcement to. So there was definitely things happening inside that house that we would assume they were aware of, having a space like that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, there is some connection there with that panic room, and that he knew where it was and to direct them to it. So he must have maybe been held somewhere else, and then maybe that's where the sister was. I can't say for sure, again, speculating, but obviously as these details unfold, it's getting darker and darker, and you can only really just imagine what these poor kids were going through. And it could have been that whole time, could have been for days that they've been, and they just strung up like, it's just awful. It's just awful.
Were you aware of Connections and 8 passengers before the news of these arrests broke last week?
I was not. I think, no, we were not. We were alerted to it last week as a station as a whole. A lot continues to be revealed kind of throughout the week, but as far as our station, it's new to us.
What has the general reaction been to this out there? I mean, these are 2 women.
Which, and I think it's awesome though that they are getting involved, that there are bigger news stations and other people doing investigations and keeping up with it and keeping it in the current, in the present, in the news with with whoever, whatever stations, local, more bigger regions, whichever, all these bigger stations starting to discuss it. And I guess this is why we've got such an outpour from all over the world with this, because it's everywhere. People are talking about it. It's touching a lot of folks, and hitting close to home for some too.
Who talk about God. They are 2 Mormon women. We know that there's a large Mormon population in Utah, of course. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Because they are really out there. They've been all over YouTube, all over Instagram, all over social media, talking about things like what sex is supposed to be like in a marriage, how you should be handling things with your children. They are out there. And so I would think, at least on our channel, there's been a lot of interest from people. Has there been a lot of interest from your viewers?
Absolutely. I think a lot of questions with this case that we're hearing about from viewers arise around the topic of social media. These women were essentially sharing their lives all over the internet and social media. How much of a role did that play?
For sure, I guess too. There's always pushing the envelope for more content, for more views, for more to please the viewers. And if the center point of your channel is to punish the kids and it's the strict parenting style, there may be an essence of, and then the incentive too, the monetary incentive, that would cause some pushing of the envelope. But by the sounds of it, with some of the stuff that they're alleging about Jodi, and just with what we could see over the past years with them that they were posting to the channel, you know, there's just, yeah, I mean, you guys get it. I don't have to go too much. I don't gotta beat the dead horse here, but it obviously that would play a factor in it.
How much of a role did, in a way, the bystander effect's been brought up a lot of, you know, were people seeing things, how many people were reporting, you know, how concerning were things they were saying. There's a lot of conversation about that. I'm hoping to talk to some neighbors today. We have another crew headed to Springville where Ruby Franke's house is. We're hoping to talk to neighbors to get a fuller picture of what they have to say, how much they went to police, how concerned they were. I know one neighbor in Ivans said that he felt like, quote, one of these women was bad, but he didn't realize how bad. So I think there's just a lot of conversation of, like, was there a way, what kind of prevention could have happened?
So this is it too. It's like there were people noticing this and noticing that there was something off and noticing some of these early warning signs, but of course they're dismissed and they're disregarded for so long, right? So, I mean, no matter how outlandish these thoughts or, you know, these, you know, inklings might feel about a neighbor that's got these kids and, you know, might be whatever situation. If you got this feeling there might be something off, it's worth looking into. And I think also with the cops and with the children's services, you know, like, if there's enough people, different people calling in and making a point, there must be a reason, you know, and they should be able to satisfy without shadow of a doubt that there's nothing wrong going on before they decide to leave and close the case, you know?
Were people speaking up? How much? I think a lot of that is still being revealed and under investigation.
We know that they are going to make a first court appearance.
Yeah, the houses are different out there. I think probably because of the climate and because they're built on a certain type of ground shield of rocks and gravel and stuff, and with the mountains and everything around. I think it's just a certain type of way of doing it, and or also because it's like contemporary and whatever. But yeah, these are like $1 million homes out here. This is not, we're not just mucking around with, you know, these aren't just your everyday Mormons.
What do you expect from that today? And you'll be attending that.
Yes, it is via.
Which I guess we could skip that ahead too. That's only had so much time to click through this, and maybe should have been a little more diligent. But today went a little differently than I'd planned, but it's all good. We're still making our way through here, but we know what happened with the court thing, so we can skip that a little bit here.
And expect to see what will be decided on whether or not bond will be set, whether or not there'll be a
you know, police, people in the workplace, things like that.
Yeah, and if you go to their websites, like, they have client testimonials on the website. You scroll down. So I think a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork talking about things that they saw that were concerning, but still in shock over, you know, seeing what more and more information we're learning about. So I'm actually hoping to talk to more people about that today too, so as we go down there and get a fuller picture.
So you haven't heard from people reaching out to your newsroom saying, well, I did a training with Jodi Hildebrandt. She helped me, or I interacted with her, or anything like that?
We haven't heard from any of those clients yet. We are reaching out to them.
Well, and because a lot of them, they're already set up and done podcasts and they're getting it out there anyway, you know, so it's more just a matter of, yeah, just casting that net and just getting in touch. And, you know, I'm sure all these people too are getting reached out by so many different news outlets as well. So I think probably as we go, closer to the trial and as time goes forward here, there's going to be a lot more coming out and a lot more, you know, potential alleged victims coming forward of the Connections group as a whole, and just within the Mormon culture as a whole, connected with these families, with both the Frankes and the Hildebrandts. So we're going to stay tuned. We're going to keep our eyes on the prize here.
So we're hoping to talk to them.
Because obviously, like, really, at the end of the day, we just want to keep the pressure on to make sure that the proper justice is served. And, like, I think a lot of us, too, are pushing that Kevin should be brought into this equation. He was there for the whole thing up until just this past year or so or whatever. So I don't think they need to let him off the hook so easily, and they should probably do some investigating there.
How big of a part do you feel in your coverage of this case religion plays in this case? It's unfortunate. We've seen in the Vallow Daybell case, obviously they were fundamentalist or some type of extremist sect of Mormonism. I feel like Mormons are kind of taking some heat right now. I mean, it's kind of unfair, but these women are people who are making these pronouncements in the name of God.
And that's another thing we're going to touch on too on the upcoming live, digging deeper on this Jodi situation and within the Mormon culture, how connected and all the things going on there. There is an element of funding, okay? Like maybe we won't go right into it right now, but yeah, maybe that's too complicated to get into right now, so let's just keep moving along here. But there is all these other elements too that we do need to cover in the nearest of futures.
Is there any talk about that out there?
I think it's too early to comment on that, and how that plays a role in their parenting, because they, in a way, claim to be experts on parenting, and give advice on that. I think it would be too early to comment on how that plays a role in that.
Okay, well, Amanda Gilbert, we really appreciate your time. We hope you have a safe trip to.
Okay, moving on. Here we go. Oh, this is going into, you know what? All right. So she made some pretty heinous claims. I'm going to just skim over this here. Warning, trigger warning. That she was blaming the children for, we'll just, you know what? Let's jump into it. We got some clips from this true hidden crime. I think I put a little tag on here too. It'll pop up in a second. But this true hidden crime, her thoughts on that part of it, and I definitely agree with a lot of what she says regarding these claims. And and in the video, the highlights video I did, we kind of touched on it as well. It all kind of is about the same thoughts on it. So I think it can speak for the majority here and how we're feeling about her throwing this out in the public courtroom, which also I do want to clarify was during a custody hearing, not during this recent trial, the pre-trial. This was during a custody hearing, and they're going to go into that, and she explains it really well, so I'll let her speak for herself. But here we go.
There are some shocking allegations coming out by Ruby Franke herself about her own children being abusers. Isn't this classic, by the way? Children found being abused, and the first thing we hear from Jodi Hildebrandt in the probable cause is don't let those children around other children. And at their custody hearing, a shelter hearing for the children yesterday, Ruby Franke spends all of...
So the day before the pre-trial, because this was the day of the pre-trial that we watched, that we covered, and I guess we didn't, not everybody got to watch it, but we've now reviewed, everybody's been able to review and see and be there for it, because of that whole debacle that day. But this was just before that, so it was definitely before, and it was during the custody hearing, and she goes into it. So again, I'll let her explain, but just the sheer just selfishness. It's just a different level, a different layer of selfishness, and like for somebody that says she's trying to do the best for her kids and cares so much about her kids, just none of it lines up,
time calling her children abusers. If you ask me, this is all a plan, all a plot. Daily Mail covered this really well. I'm going to read from the Daily Mail article. It's also on our Facebook page, facebook.com/hiddentruecrime. And then we're going to talk about it for just a second because I'm processing what I'm hearing here. So I'm out here. It's such a nice day. I'm out here working. Let's just read from this Daily Mail article together. Mother of 6, Ruby Franke, sobbed in court. Again, this was yesterday, Thursday, as she appeared for a shelter hearing for her 4 minor children to determine custody. Speaking to the public courtroom Thursday, can you imagine that too, like speaking to the public courtroom, like she's speaking to all the people there? The Mormon mom at times broke down as she made shocking claims that one of her minor children sexually abused their sibling and molested several other family members and children in the neighborhood over the years. So first off too, I want to point this out. She is speaking in a public courtroom Thursday. She has no shame. If this is true or if it's not true, and I'm going to tell you right now, I do not think it's true at all. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But let's say for a second it is true. What mother shares these horrible allegations about a child they love in a public courtroom? That alone is a red flag.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. Like, this is just, it just adds to the sickness, you know? It just adds more layers to how sick these people are. This woman, man.
You know, if my child that I loved had issues and was abusing other kids, you know, I would try to, this isn't a juvenile courtroom, like, I would try to keep this juvenile's records private. She said she took down her entire channel.
Well, and whether she did or not, this is what we're getting at. Whether it is a true statement or not, that's not the point. Putting it out and airing it out at a custody hearing, and, like, the whole thing is just, it just doesn't, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable and bothered by it. It's just not the time and the place. That if that is a concern, then it can be brought up at another time, but they're just trying to figure out where to put the kids that it's going to be safe for them and keep them together and whatever they got to do for, like, the best of the children, you know?
Protect and save her kids. But she has no problems in a public courtroom spewing this stuff about her own children. So let's just leave that there. But I'm going to say again, I do not even believe these allegations, and I'll tell you why in just a second. The popular YouTuber was arrested along with her business partner, Jodi Hildebrandt, last month and charged with 6 counts of felony child abuse after one of her sons was discovered with open wounds. Sorry about the getting car sick here. Open wounds holding a phone while reading, and duct tape.
Not aired out in the public as a defense for your own crimes, and not just sending them to camps or sending them to whatever church things and expecting that to fix it, because obviously that didn't work in the Duggar situation. So probably would get them the very best help that they can get as far as specialist therapy, because you can afford it, and not somebody through the whole, like, this is the thing, is that they end up going through and being, it's like, it's a Mormon school, it's a Mormon family, Mormon church, Mormon this, like, and then everyone in the community is Mormon, so the therapist is likely to be Mormon and to side with the parents more than the kids either way, no matter what's happening. But in any case, whatever has happened because of this boiling pot of a situation and the anxiety and then the keeping them away from everything and yeah, isolating and sheltering them from the kids, pulling them out of school, all of that is creating a recipe for disaster. And however that ends up, can you really blame the kids? Like, these were all kids. We're talking about children, and that they are a direct result of the environment they grew up in a lot of ways. Like, obviously there's the argument of nature versus nurture, but, and then we have her saying, like, that since a 3-year-old he'd been having access to material that was explicit, and he's had this big problem. What 3-year-old has access and knows how to access that kind of material if it wasn't shown to him? And like, there's so many other layers there, and for her to just be spewing it out on public record when it has nothing to do with what what they're trying to deal with in that moment, like, that's just reckless. It's just reckless.
Via video from a Utah jail where she remains on no bail hold, at least until her next court appearance. YouTuber mom Ruby Franke has been charged with the 6 felony child abuse counts. We know this. The 12-year-old son was found with open wounds and...
Which, this is a lot of the same stuff, too, that comes up in these interviews that we're going to be touching on later this week and deep diving into more with Jesse and the other, anyone else that's coming forward since, but Adam Steed and Jesse Hildebrandt. This is all lining up. A lot of this lines up with what they dealt with having their character, allegedly having their character destroyed, having their reputation destroyed, and was said that they couldn't have kids around these people and making implications of something that isn't a thing, you know, and just using it as like it's twisted. It gets really twisted, so that this is why we're taking a moment to get a foundational stream in and a recap before going right into that.
Duct tape on his limbs, so heartbreaking. And now, though, Franke is making astonishing claims during the hearing that one of her minor children sexually abused another. Franke's husband Kevin, wearing a dark suit, sat at a table with his attorney looking straight ahead as...
My concern, I guess, in these matters is why this specifically also, if it is, like, whether it's real or not, like, I don't know what to think about it, you know, exactly, because again, we do need to wait and see what happens, what more comes out, but my concern is that being a cover for some material they may find in the home, and I don't want to believe that or want to think that of anyone or anything, like, and I'm just speculating the possibilities here, we're just throwing out spitballing here of why that specifically, you know, like, I'm starting to wonder what more is going on with the whole overall situation, you know, so, like, we do gotta kind of keep our minds open and be, you know, as crazy as it all sounds, and as much as it does sound like, what is the likelihood, what are the odds, you know, there is also a lot more deeper, darker stuff going on in the world that, you know, that would shock the socks off you too, that, you know, that exactly this is it. This is all the more reason we need to better understand what's happening here and why. Because, yeah, is it an environmental thing? Is it nature versus nurture? Like, this is stuff that we're still learning, still exploring. This is why they update the DSM every so often. This is why there's studies and different things happening all the time to try to better understand the human condition and just trauma and these different things, you know?
Wife made the sickening allegations. That, to me, is strange too. Like, what? No reaction from Kevin? No, like, how dare you? No, stop talking about our child in this public setting, just looking straight ahead with his attorney while she made these horrendous allegations. The court hearing presided over lasted 30 minutes, and inside was Franke's husband, Kevin, again, and at another table.
Which, I mean, how are any of these kids getting access to anything if they, like, all of them have their phones taken away? They're, like, everything's so controlled. They're, yeah, exactly, taking it to school. They're not allowed to play with the neighborhood kids, per se. Some of them, I guess, were at one point, but then it started getting, like, less and less. The circle was getting tighter and tighter on what they were allowed to do and not allowed to do. Like, when would they even have time to do any of this? Like, when they're always on camera, there's always something going on. They're doing the chores. They're doing the whole thing, like, the day-to-day. You know, with this much supervision, if any of this was going on, who was responsible? Who was the adult that was supposed to be looking after them? Who was the adult that was supposed to be supervising them and making sure that stuff doesn't happen? Right? Like, where are the parents? If these kids are out here doing all this with each other and all willy-nilly, and it to the point that some of the kids felt that it was abuse, allegedly, where were the parents? Hello, parents. 3-year-old isn't the one making it in his brain and understanding even what you're talking about that kind of thing, let alone where to find it or how to access it. Like, you can't tell me. You cannot tell me. I mean, exactly, but so who showed him first? Where did he get access to it? How did that come into play? This is the questions we need to be asking here, not pointing fingers at the freaking kids. The kids are the victims here. Let's deal with that. Let's deal with these women did wrong, that we've got the charges are laid, like, or not laid, but the charges are up, and they're, you know, the trial is on. It's happening soon. Like, maybe we just get through that first, and then I don't know. It just seems so, like,
Were the state's attorneys and what appears to be Franke's 2 oldest daughters, appearing to be accompanied by an attorney as well. Ruby Franke's husband, Kevin, appeared at Thursday's hearing with his attorney, Randy Kester. All right, stay with me here because we've got.
Well, and that's it too. If Kevin cared that much about his kids, why didn't he do something about all of this when he left the home? Why wasn't more, like, calls from all these neighbors and friends and people and whatever are one thing, but if the husband calls in and is like, listen, I'm concerned for the welfare of my children, this woman, blah, 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 Jodi, da-da-da-da-da, like, if he was that concerned and loved his kids and wanted best for his kids, why wouldn't he show concern when it mattered before it got to this point?
To break this down when I'm done and tell you exactly what I'm thinking. Seeming to pin the...
So why does this child have unsupervised access to a device that can access that has access to that? They have apps that can control what these children's devices are able to access. There's kids-only apps. There's kids-only programs that you can run on the thing. So who was responsible to prevent that? Regardless of how easy it is, and then yes, if he had, it would warp the mind. Yep, fine. Who's responsible at the end of the day? who was supposed to be the one to protect from that material? Because even just like having a minor having access to that type of material in your home that's got to be illegal somewhere. I'm pretty sure somewhere down the line it's illegal, and if it's not, it should be. There should be no exposure to that as a 3-year-old. Like, what kind of mental institution are they running here?
For her behavior on her children. That's a key line there. Thank you for this line, seeming to pin the blame for her behavior on her children. Talk about projection, talk about deflection, talk about being the victim. Franke went into a horrific detail about how one of her 6 kids abused other children. She claimed that one of Franke's kids began looking at pornography at just 3 years old. Okay, let's stop there for just a second. What 3-year-old has the ability to look at pornography without an adult allowing them to look or giving them the material?
Right. Thank you.
It just smells like BS to me. Either the parent...
Okay, and if you're living in a home full of children, and you're supposed to be the one giving parenting advice, and you're supposed to be setting your whole channel is built around setting a standard for good parenting and giving parental advice, you'd think you would have set the things in place to prevent such a thing from happening. And exactly, you're just literally making the argument for me as to how much overbearing supervision was made on these children, but then no supervision whatsoever. You're saying there were no... Regardless of that, exactly, this is why people need to pay attention what their kids are doing on the internet. This is why they need to use the tools and the apps that are in place in order to protect your children. If you love and care for your children and you're doing everything to protect them and you're doing everything to prevent damage, you take steps to do that. Simple, right? You think? Might be. She can figure out how to run the camera and do the internet thing, do the channel, do all the other stuff, do the live streams, do whatever the heck she was doing over there. But she couldn't figure out how to make sure that the devices the children had access to could not access explicit material.
Are giving the child pornography at 3 years old, or this whole thing is absolute BS. And we're going to talk about that too, the pornography bit. That's also important.
And that's the thing too, unless, like, you got to think all the ads and the things showing up on your system are going to be related to your searches and related to what you're doing on there. So if you see if it's very easy for you to fall into that, maybe you need to slow down on your consumption a little bit, perhaps, because if that's all you get ads for, and that's all, like, how easy it is to fall into it, you know, like, I don't see it. You'd have to really go look at if you have things set in a way and you're not viewing on a regular basis, which again brings us to, okay, so if one of these parents is viewing it on a regular basis enough that it would be that easy access to click the wrong thing and it's boom, explicit material, why are you leaving that out where your kids can get it? Why are you not putting that in somewhere you could lock it away? Because you are supposed to be the shining example of parenting. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't just a parent mistake. This is a parent that's claiming to be, an expert on parenting and discipline, joining up with somebody that's supposed to have all these years of experience being like a psychologist with families and kids and couples and so on and so forth. You're telling me that that's not something they would have thought about to prevent?
The pin in that. And then in one of the most shocking claims, Franke said that her child had began sexually abusing a younger sibling for years, adding that eventually the two of them began to abuse the other children. I mean,
which also, and we're going to dive into it deeper too, but their rules and regulations around certain things and the way that they get into the kids' minds about what's okay and not okay and what's, how they define things is a lot different than who everyday defines as, where some people are considering that perhaps just like the tickling or certain things that are an interaction between children that they've decided to single out as a thing. And then, like, similar as the Jesse interview, they go into how the punishments and the things would come to a point that they would just start saying things, like admitting to things, and just to make it stop. Just to get done and over with, like, okay, yeah, I did the bad thing, like, give me the punishment, let's be done and over with it, you know? So there's people speculating whether or not maybe there's a similar tactic, that if what Jesse alleges is the truth and they're able to prove that in the court of law, like, all of that's going to connect together in such a way.
It's just horrendous. Again, public courtroom, sharing all of these details with the public to now be printed, you know, in media. What loving mother does that? Even if it was true, I really don't believe it is. I really don't believe it is. We're gonna talk about it. Franke said that in May, her child confessed to sexual.
Okay, but what you're missing is it's the parents' responsibility to prevent that from happening. So whether it was by accident or on purpose, how did it happen? It's not the kid's fault. It's the people that are supposed to be protecting and supervising these children. Simple, right?
Abusing 20 people, including cousins and neighbors. WTF. Her child confessed to sexually abusing 20 people. She provided then, keyword, no proof of her sickening allegations. The court went eerily silent after Ruby made the disturbing claims.
No crap. No shit. Of course. Like, that's shocking. It's shocking that a woman would even be saying that about her kid to the open public. To, yes, go on public record. So for what purpose? If you actually are giving a crap about your kids and you're going to take responsibility for the consequences of your actions, like, you're going to just throw your kid under the bus? It's the kid's fault. It must be the kid's fault. It's not the parents at all.
Imagine being there, you know, it just went eerily silent. People didn't even know what to think, like, to think that a mother would be saying this. The judge then said that her alleged abusive child will need to be placed in a home with no other children. I mean, I don't know if that's a bad thing, because if the children are brainwashed, maybe that's best for the child to be alone without other children. But it does make me angry, because Jodi Hildebrandt, while getting arrested, her first thing that she said was, don't let these children be around other children. And in some ways, I feel like Jodi Hildebrandt won. But at the same time, I mean, this is a question for Dr. John. I have no idea. Maybe it's best that the child will be in a loving home without anyone else. But it hurts me that now everything, you know, now they're going to be without their sibling. That it does make me sad. Franke's husband, Kevin, he looks straight ahead. In a surprising, now get this, can you imagine this in a public courtroom? In a surprising courtroom move, an attorney who was sitting in the public viewing area. Okay, again.
So, and this, there's, you know, they've already got this, something going on here. Like, there's a reason they're having this happening at a custody hearing that's going to go on public record, where it can't actually be airing it out, but it is going to end up in the transcript. It ended up being reported. It ended up being on the like, blasted across the public media. So what is the purpose of that? Because it's not to help the kid. Jodi had already said, keep them away from other kids, whatever. So already that was in place. So why would it need to be brought up to the court and not in a separately? Why wouldn't you file for that separately? You got lawyers to do all this stuff for you, to prep for the whole thing for you. Why is that brought up publicly? Is the question we need to be asking here.
Public viewing area, guys. We're talking people there to watch. Like, you don't talk when you're in the public viewing area. Can you imagine? I can't imagine me listening to the Daybell trial, sitting in the public viewing area, and all of a sudden just standing up. But this is what's about to happen. An attorney sitting in the public viewing area stood up all of a sudden and asked the judge to hear details about the molestation of another child, because a mother of one of the alleged victims was in the courtroom. This was I just flipped this around. This was sorry, now you're looking in my kitchen and you see Dr. John, but this is a custody hearing, and you've got an attorney standing up saying, now let's hear from one of the parents, you know, of the victim. They're turning this into an absolute circus and an absolute abuse of a child again. Like, let's keep re-victimizing the victim here. Let's make this custody hearing an absolute show of accusations against a young minor child.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? Like, she said it better than I could even say it, but, like, okay, so maybe, like, you know, maybe we take another 2-minute break here, because that, you know, all of this, even though I already know what's coming, it's still this pretty hefty doofy, and just for your guys' sake, let me give you a moment. Let's just take a breather, let's recenter ourselves. I'm gonna refill this coffee real quick, and then we're gonna finish this off here and get into the discussion portion, and then that should wrap it up for the evening. But yeah, so I'll give you a couple moments, guys, if you want to get a refill as well, use the facilities, whatever you got to do, grab a snack, and I will be right back. And we're back for the final end portion here, where we're just going to finish off what she has to say here, because I do value her opinion. She's been following this along too really well, and I would suggest, once again, if you weren't here when I'd mentioned it earlier, check out this at Hidden True Crime, and then as well as at Mormon Stories for those they have the full-length interviews that you guys maybe want to check out ahead of us doing our deep dive on it, and that's up to you guys. But then we'll finish this off, and then we'll do a little open discussion at the end, and you guys in the chat will have my full undivided attention, because I kind of been back and forth here trying to get through this as quick as we can, because there is a lot to cover, and we do want to have everybody on the same page as we go along this week. What are you guys saying here? Maybe we'll catch up on these quick here for a second before we jump right back into it. Oh yeah, the Flow Rida song or whatever that she had a fit about, where I think they just were choosing from the popular TikTok songs or whatever at the time, where it's just like, probably not even the words, it's like the tune or whatever, it's part of it, like maybe even a bit of the words, but it's not like it's the whole thing or whatever. It's with TikTok especially, it's like a short form thing, right? So, you know, that's like a whole nother thing. But yeah, if you guys want to go through and look through everything, I've been covering it pretty closely all week, and you know, and even in the dark corners and stuff too, start to touch on everything to see the whole bigger picture here, and you know, where it all started going wrong and what could have been done in advance to maybe prevent some of this harm brought to these children, and whether the children were causing harm to other children or not. That's a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing. And again, would be the responsibilities of the parents. Like, whatever's happening with the kids is the parents' responsibility. Like, who else's responsibility is it? Is it the internet's fault? Is it like these websites' fault? Like, whose fault is it? It's the parents. It's the parents that are responsible for the children. And if you can't protect them and keep the bare minimum of necessities, and you're not able to, like, you're preventing them from thriving, and they're having access to this kind of material, probably you shouldn't be out there giving advice on parenting. Probably. But anyway, here's a link to the whole playlist. That's everything. It's all the stuff, all the news. And then, yeah, so here we go. Shall we?
Abuse that they're most likely not doing. I don't believe this abuse for 1 second. 1 second. You know, talk about this is juvenile court, guys. Juvenile court. And they're like, let's just take this child down and call this child an abuser until this child believes he's an abuser, which we're going to talk about that. The judge denied the request, thank you, judge, from the attorney in this public viewing area, citing that details of alleged abuse can be heard at a future time, which
already, though, by that point, the damage is done, of course. Like, yeah, okay, like, we'll deal with that later. If that is a situation, let's deal with that in the appropriate manner. But by that time, and having the lawyer stand up and just say anything without having any proof or anything, and then the mother wouldn't even say anything. Like, they had the random lawyer, and some random mother, like, oh, it's a victim, the mother of the victim of this kid. Like, all of that is, like, setting an image, and it makes an impact in a way that is not admissible in a court of law in such a way. Like, that's not official. Like, there's not anything real to that. It's just making a statement. But that statement now is set in stone and will show on a public record and has been submitted to the media. So whether there's any truth to it or not, she's completely defaming her children in such a way, and without offering proof, without doing it in the correct manner.
Why are we bringing it up here? Outside of court, dailymail.com attempted to get comment from the mother whose kid was allegedly molested by Franke Child, but they refused to speak. It's kind of weird too. Oh, we'll talk in a public viewing area, in public view, but we're not going to mention anything to the Daily Mail. Kevin Franke and his attorney left the courtroom and gave no comment when asked if he believes his wife's shocking allegations. He said that he had been instructed by the court not to comment to the press. Out of respect for the children involved, we have no comment. Out of respect for the children involved, you sat there stone-faced, Kevin, while your wife threw your own children under the bus, calling them sexual deviants, and yet you have no comment to the press?
Yeah, exactly. Which I think, too, at this point, like, he's already on the verge and the edge with incriminating himself and stuff, and you know what I mean? Like, he's already still kind of on the fence here of them trying to evade their responsibility in the matters, and to keep Kevin off the hook, I guess, here. But as most of us, I think, all believe that he should be investigated as well, and that, you know, they need to take into consideration everything that happened up to this point, and not just be looking at just these charges, which I think coming in the near future here, I suspect we are going to see a lot more charges coming forward, either from just other former clients, Jodi's, or whatever, what have you. I feel like there is going to be so much more coming out with this, so I hope that they stay alert on it and are you know, keeping their investigations going from all ends, because I believe that or what I've heard through these some of these media sources, they're saying that not only is the police doing their investigation, but the Children's Services is doing a more thorough investigation on their end too. So hopefully that includes evaluating whether or not the father should be the main caregiver, which again, I guess, you know, I'm a little torn on that too, because I would rather all the kids be able to stay together, and not going to a parent or family member could make the potential that they would be split up, which again, though, in with some of their cases, maybe that would be better for them, and let them adjust and let them like decompress from the whole thing and not have to be around other kids or answer questions or whatever, like just an adult understanding. Who knows what exactly how they're going to go about that, and that's again why we're going to be keeping our eye on this. And we are going to be diving deeper into these other alleged victims of this therapeutic program that Jodi was having the children going through, I guess, like it is how they would put it, and I don't know, that's obviously not the wording I would use, but it does have some similarities to what some of these other people have come forward and alleged, and are hoping to have their trials or have their cases reopened against Jodi. And because Ruby and Jodi were connected with that company together, and you know, there's a lot that's going to come out just on that too, outside of the 8-passenger situation. So again, we are going to dive more into that in the coming days here, and stay tuned on that. Like I said, make sure to make sure to subscribe and click that little bell and all of those good things so you get notified. And I will be posting the live events ahead of time, so you guys can tell when they'll be upcoming and be able to get notified specifically. But yeah, with that said, if you guys have any more questions, and let me have a quick look here on the chat to see if I missed anything, because I kind of been half and half here, trying to keep up with you guys. But I think, you know, we're pretty much covered most of it here. Maybe it wasn't content seen in the US as easily as it might be in other countries. Well, this is it. And maybe some places don't have the same kind of access to different software and apps to be able to protect kids from it. But there's no reason whatsoever this kid should have had access to it for being who these people say they are, for how protective they are in every single other way, but then somehow this kid's getting this access to material that he should never have had access to. If you saw the local commercial in Utah that the teacher referred to as being cute and fun and well-known with the apple-bottom jeans fit Ruby through, you'd laugh. Yeah, and I included some of that in the emotional violence video, actually, like how put off she was by what everybody else seems to be okay with, but her specifically feels like there's something wrong with it, and if she don't get her way, she has a little fit, you know. So that's in there too if you guys want to check that out. I've pinned the link to the playlist of everything up until this point, all the coverage. The live replays are there too if you guys want to check those out. This will be available as soon as possible afterwards. I like to wonder why my kid was acting out in such a way. I wouldn't slap them, because what does that serve? I would take them to a professional and not tie them up. Exactly. I mean, this is it. There's so many other steps that can be taken and should never go there. It should never ever get to that point that you need to be, like, if they're at that point, then probably they should be at a professional and or in some program that can help them with that specifically, and not just be punishing them and increasing punishment, because obviously that's not working. Obviously, it's not working if things are happening, if bad things were happening, with all of this perfect parenting and all the extra punishing and all the extra whatever. You know? And that's the thing, too. A little clip around the ear is one thing, but this is where we're putting emphasis on the psychological warfare and the emotional violence, on top of what could have also been different forms of physical abuse and trauma. You know? Pretty sure legally they have to open an investigation of the core allegations she spouted. Which, they should have filed that privately. Why did that happen in an open public court area, but then they wouldn't comment to the public when they made this public thing? Because they're trotting around what may be defamation, what may be, like, obviously, there's something more going on there. I can't say for sure, but this is why we got to keep a close eye on this, because there's some fishy things going on, and it does match up with some of what these other potential alleged victims have been saying about how Jodi goes about things. So, all the more reason to keep our eye on the different connections, pun intended, funny she chose that as the company name with all of the connections she seems to have, allegedly. But anyways, I try to keep kids together when they can. It's not always best 100% of the time. Sometimes the child needs to heal on their own. Well, and this is it. It's going to depend, but I hope, like I said earlier, I hope, and I've said before, I hope the same extreme of care is put into like the evaluation and the assessment of these kids and their needs assessment, their psychological needs, all of the across the board, what they're going to need to be able to heal as quickly as possible and reconcile with everything that they've gone through and be able to, you know, be on the path to a happier, healthier life. Well, this is it, and it just seems like she's trying to deflect or trying to make an excuse for what she's done. And none of that is any excuse. None of that is even should have been brought up in that forum, in the custody hearing, you know what I mean? So I think in some ways they kind of know what they're trying to do, but I don't know if it's going to work out because everybody's keeping an eye on it, and we're all discussing and keeping you know, I don't know. We're gonna try not to let anything slip by us, and hopefully nothing slips by the court, and hopefully this is you know, that they got their best people on it in all fronts, because sometimes through the process of being removed and then treated for some types of abuse and trauma, that through that process there can be recycling of trauma too, and more damage can be done. So hopefully they got their best folks that are not directly connected to anyone that could be connected to any of the people that may or may not have been part of the horrible situation these kids were found in. And when also setting up safe search, like there's so many different ways to prevent that from happening. And again, like, why do you have this many kids if you can't keep them all safe and fed and not watching explicit material at 3 years old? Like, whose responsibility was it to prevent that from happening while you were doing all the filming and acting like the best parent in the world? You know? So she's kind of almost just telling on herself even more so in ways, if it is in fact the truth, you know? Which I don't know, I'm kind of siding with this hidden true crime woman, that I don't think it's exactly how they say. I think there are certain limits and levels of what they consider to be something that isn't something. Like, you know, the more I'm gathering here, sometimes if you shake it too many times, it could be considered playing with it, or, you know, there's a big misconstruence of what is and isn't, and there's a lot of pressure put on confessing to sins, and a lot of kids just want to get out of the hot seat, you know, and if they're pushed to a point, they start admitting to things that never happened, because, like, what kind of kid admits that they had done things to 20 some odd kids in the neighborhood, and how would they find 20 different kids with everything that we know so far? You know, they wouldn't even have the access, and she's just constantly up their butts with the camera all the time. So when did they have the chance to even do that? You know, and why wasn't it reported to the correct authorities at that time? Why did you save that in your back pocket to throw out now that you've been arrested for crimes against children? Now you're gonna pull this magic card out of your backpack and, oh, by the way, I had to keep punishing them because they're all depraved. Well, why are they depraved, Ruby? What happened there? Aren't you the picture-perfect, shining example of parenting? So what do you have to say there? How did that happen? Right? So, and yeah, there's so many other layers that can be added now. Like, if this was 10, 15 years ago and the kid came upon some stuff, maybe. But if you think about the timeline for right now, it's still maybe only 5-6 years ago-ish. For if it is whatever, you know what I mean? If we're going to try to guesstimate here. But again, if you're going to present yourself as the all-knowing parental whatever, you're the Dr. Spock of tomorrow, or whatever, Dr. Spock of YouTube over here, of discipline and whatever, then probably you'd think you would have had a handle on that. So all the more reason to question. Well, and that's it too. Like, if they think that there's something wrong and they're convinced that there's something that you did wrong there, and they're gonna sit and put the pressure on, and to the point of almost torture, until you give them an answer, and they don't really know even what are you even trying to ask me, Ma? Like, come on. You know? Like, these kids probably don't even know what the, whatever. They shouldn't know about any of that at that age. That's on the parents. That's on the parents the whole time. Up until teenage years, where, yeah, you're not going to have as much control over teenagers as you are with the younger kids, but, like, come on. You can't tell me that's the kid's fault, even if it is true. But yeah, with that said, do you guys have any more questions, comments, concerns? I do want to mention once again to go check out the @Mormon Stories, their podcast, John's podcast, and check out this Hidden True Crime. They do an awesome job too. They've been doing some awesome interviews and deep diving as well. Check out all the links there in the playlist. Get yourselves all caught up with what's going on, because like I mentioned, it's going to get deeper and darker, and I suspect a lot more is going to come out of it. And it's going to get all the more complicated, so the more you understand as you go, that little bit as you go, then the more it's going to all make sense when you get there. Yeah, and then when showing signs of possibly going into, like, a hysterical, like, I don't even know, it's so depressing, and I don't get it, and I don't understand, and to the point of, like, laughter, and then you're going to be punished for laughing at the disbelief on top of it, like, that's a whole nother story, too, for sure. So we're going to dive into all of that psychological warfare and the emotional violence and the similarities that we see across the board between these potential former alleged victims of Jodi, and then just, you know, we've got the story from the cousin, from Ruby Franke, her cousin. All of it's starting to piece together a bigger picture here that I think is a very important part of this overall case. So we're going to keep on it. So like I said again earlier, stay tuned. Like, subscribe, share, all those wonderful things. But yeah, no more comments, no more concerns. Guess that's it, that's all. Everybody's satisfied. Alrighty then. Well, if you have any more questions or concerns, I guess if you want to, you know, in the comments, I've been trying to keep on with the comments and the videos and keep up with everything the same way too, so you can always feel free to drop a line there. But yeah, I will be here for this up until, and we'll be doing the trial. We'll be doing another coverage of the trial on the 21st or whatever day it may be changed to. So yeah, if there's nothing else, we'll call it for this evening, and I thank you guys, for everybody that made it right to the end. Jamie, thank you for joining us and for also helping shed light on some of this other Mormon type stuff that I didn't necessarily have a grasp on ahead of time here, but I definitely appreciate some of the insight, and all you other folks offering some of your insight as well, and adding to the discussion, and for following this along the whole time. Definitely appreciate you. For everybody that hit like and subscribe already, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your week. I guess hopefully will be Wednesday that I'll see us again here, but I can't say for sure. Coming into these deeper dives situations, it is getting darker, and I'm gonna have to do it in such a way for everybody's sake. So yeah, enjoy your day, enjoy the rest of the week, enjoy whatever it is you're about to do after this. And I will catch you on the flip side. Oh, and yes, thank you to all the new folks that have joined us, enjoyed the conversation as well. I don't want to forget you guys. Thank you, and thank you to the lurkers. We love the lurkers just as much as we do the folks in the chat. So everybody, big shiny love to you. And then now for real, I will catch you on the flip side.